ideas, right? But we don't really know each other from anybody, and that's something that we're trying to. I was trying to break the ice a little bit the first time, and then I missed that second one, which again I did not intend to. But I was hoping to create some sort of like camaraderie, I would say, and as we grow our channel, that would be the theme behind all this. All the other channels that I've been listening to, and Rami can back me up on this. They don't get proscriptive, right? They give very general guidelines for what people should do or could do to improve themselves. But on a day-to-day, like, accountability is what gets somebody motivated, right? What's going to get a guy out of bed, out of his slump and energetic? Really, it's somebody who gives a damn, right? Like, that's what anybody wants these days. Just somebody give a damn about who I am as a person, and maybe we can cooperate, right? Maybe we can work together on that and see where that goes. If I'm mistaken somehow, let me know. But I think a lot of the people who make it to channels like Rami's, I would call black pillars, right? Just for lack of better context or frame of reference. But as we've said before, generally the people who get this far and get to this point are the guys who are seeing past, seeing past the red pill, seeing past like all the other pills, basically. And once you get to black, there's not much between there and like non-existence, right? Because then everything just goes nihilistic and meaningless. So trying to help people avoid that, trying to help people turn around from that, and also make something, right? Like build something together. And I think a sense of camaraderie, like Raman is saying, is a way to like make our tribe, right? That's kind of what everybody's been saying, and I think that's the right thing to do. We've got to start defining who we are and what we stand for. And I think part of that should be like actually giving a shit about each other, and like trying to help each other improve ourselves by helping each other being accountable, I guess. That would be one way that I would want to like one topic of conversation that we could explore if you guys are up for that.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Because I mean, I like talking with you guys, but there's more to both of you than us just talking every once a week, right? You guys have lives. You guys are doing things. You're going through struggles and like on a minute to minute basis sometimes that I can't comprehend, right? Like I probably could never even deal with. So the point that I'm trying to make here is by being more like cohesive as a tribe, that gives us a sense of like belonging to something matters. Like to the human psyche, it matters. Being a part of a group matters. And it just seems like we're guys that have fallen into a rather interesting group, which is a bunch of men who want to be independent, right?
Listen, that's true.
Not only are they independent, but they're disillusioned about society in general, and then they're wary of humans de facto because, well, once again, this is generally the black pill people are generally the people smart enough to see like they have pattern recognition. And they can see how like events unfold for their lives, right?
That pattern recognition is like absolutely deadly.
Yeah, and I think once again we're dealing with a rather intelligent like section of humanity that can make it this far, and to not self-delete already means that you're like tough, right? Like if you're black pilled and you don't immediately commit suicide, basically you're tough enough to withstand some things, right? Like, you know, life can beat you down pretty good if you're not careful, but um, that's what the whole idea of this, you know, tribe is about, right? Giving people energy, giving people actionable things that they can do, and giving people like somebody that they could talk to when like shit sucks, man, right? Like, you know, I had a hard time. Like, I didn't get up and go to the gym this morning or whatever, right? Like, I don't know why, right? And if somebody else is online, maybe they can go on to a chat room and talk it out, or you know, work through things, or somebody, you know, been there, done that, or you know, something. Maybe they just need somebody to listen to them, right?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be like that'd be like an ideal way, like an ideal thing if that happens at some point, like to have a
Well, the
place where like
interesting,
people can get together like that.
yeah, the interesting part about this, and forgive me for rambling on and on. You guys can jump in whenever you want to, but um, as the ideas come to me, I'm just kind of laying them out for you guys. One of the things that comes to mind here is that if we start caring about people, right? Like caring about these guys, first of all, that's going to retain them. That's going to get more people to join our content because they're going to say these guys are legit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the plus side, we actually have the time to do that right now, right? We have the time to actually be. Guys are looking for life coaches. I assure you, there are people who are in the black pill right now that have any amount of money and they give anything to not be so close to suicide. And I think that we can offer, I don't want to like monetize a service like that, but I think out of generosity and potentially, you know, gratitude, I guess, people would donate money for services like that. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are like, we're here now, but we're early, right? And I'm seeing the
Yeah,
wave coming. There's just going to be
yeah,
lots of people who have no direction in life. They have nothing to work towards, and they have no reason to even try, right? And the only thing that I've seen work consistently is when you actually give a fuck about somebody for long enough to actually help them, like, improve their life, right? And it looks a lot like listening to people and taking the time to, you know, understand them and understand their lives so that they can actually make those improvements. But that's the kind of shit where you get like friendships for life, right? That's the kind of shit where like people don't backstab you when, you know, when you become millionaires later on and, you know, some business transaction needs to happen and you make that call, right? This is the kind of thing where when you build this tribe, we got to build it right, and we got to make sure that you know, we're not too large to lose track of each other, but um, you know, the more people we can get and the more guys who have energy, who have intellect, who have money, you know, or knowledge or whatever, you know, whatever skills or assets that they bring to the table, the more people we can get to pool those assets together, the more likely we're going to be successful, right? Like the more likely we can figure out some way, shape, or form to make something that works for everyone and something that looks like it will survive whatever the hell is coming next, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and it kind of starts with how we approach it from this circle we've established now, because it's as noble as it is to pursue a grand endeavor such as what you've described. Uh, that's something we kind of have to play with ourselves, because like
Sure.
we haven't been talking together for that long of a time.
Right.
So, you know, within this circle that we've kind of established now, it's kind of about uh, taking care of these knots that we've that we've kind of brought up so far, and just coming up with a practical means of addressing that. So, yeah, in to summarize, we sort of had to experiment on ourselves in order to get a better picture of how we expanded out towards a larger potential base of people.
You are absolutely correct. I would I would say that's true. Which is why I'm telling you about this right now, James. I have practiced. Well, let me give you a little bit of background. So, about 3 years ago now, I well, shit, this is story time. Rami, do you want to hear story time, or should I keep it short?
I mean, yeah. Oh, and anything you want to tell, I'm recording. So like, if you don't want to say like as like personal and lengthy as you want.
We can edit all that stuff out as needed.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah, becoming a video editor may be a good idea in the future. On my skill list of things, to add that to the heap of things that I should learn. So basically, about 2 years ago, I had a girlfriend 3 years ago now, I had a girlfriend that she was basically the prettiest girl that I dated after being like a serial monogamous for the last decade. Anyway, I was 30 at the time, and I started dating her at 23, and I was like, all right, this is it. Like, this is the best I could do, or this is the most that I want to try. I'm going to see if this will work. And long story short, I was listening to Tom Likas a long time ago, and throughout that relationship, I remembered things that he said in some of his shows. And I was like, man, I'm like not happy. This is not working for me. I'm doing all the things that I know I should be doing in my life that give happiness or meaning to people's lives, and it wasn't working. So I had always, I've always battled depression, but at a certain point, I realized like one of my best friends was getting married, and I realized like my girlfriend wanted to have children, and she wanted to get married, and she was still just immature in so many ways, and probably a little bit more narcissistic than I was willing to put up with. So, long story short, I broke up with her, and I started like this depressive spiral that was fueled by by a number of substances. So I got to this place where I was learning more about the red pill and trying to figure out what the heck I was doing wrong in life and why I was having no success despite what I was told in my life or how I was shown how to act or thought I should behave. And finally, I got to like black pill stuff and started realizing how hard it was for so many guys out there. And that's when I realized, that's when I started listening to statistics about the suicide rates for young men, especially. But even, I mean, just it's astronomically high throughout all age ranges for men these days. And even the younger boys now are killing themselves in droves. So, well, at that point, I kind of pulled myself out of my self-pity and the thoughts of self-deletion that I had at that point, and started figuring out like what the hell could I do with my talents and skills, and how could I possibly improve myself in such a way that I could maybe help others do it at the same time, right? And continue on that road with me and help me, build a bigger road, basically. So that's a story, right? Long story long, I suppose.
Pretty much just coming into the realization that you got a raw deal. I mean, for what you were intending to offer, the dynamics didn't really add up in a way that made the relationship worthwhile.
That is true. That is true. I've well, I never really took looks into account whenever I was dating, and I'm unclear exactly how much that played a role in my discontent with with most of my previous relationships. From the get-go, I came from like a religious background, so I was told more or less to look for a personality over features, and I think that helped me in a lot of ways, but that probably also hindered me in a lot of ways as far as my like mental mindset and the framework with which I viewed women. So while it was a raw deal, I had to take responsibility, right? I more or less have been a child my entire life, and only really recently in the last 6 months I've been making more progress. But in the last 2 years, that's when I really noticed that when my girlfriend started talking, of 25 at the time, she started talking about having children, and all I could think to myself is, we're both children. We have no idea how to even take care of ourselves. How are we going to take care of, a small human? So yeah, that was my best shot, and I said if that one didn't work, I was going to give up on women and just focus on working on helping the already living, right? Whoever is still around, let's figure out what we can do about them.
Yeah, just overall making this limited time we have here as worthwhile as possible.
Yeah, it sucks enough as on its own. We might as well try to help each other wherever we can, however much we can, right? As things start falling apart around us, I figure I might as well start picking up some pieces now and see if I can start putting something back together, right? Pick up a rock or a brick or two and start making a foundation or a wall or something to help rebuild.
Yeah.
So the point of all this is this is going to be a lot of work, right? And as you've noticed, the scale is rather grand. I don't think it's impossible to achieve, but the reality is a lot of people are assholes, and a lot of people who get here are men who are very disgruntled about life, right? So they're not exactly the happiest guys to be around. So double challenge there, right? Not only that, we're also talking about having meaningful conversations with guys who probably have never had a meaningful conversation in their life, because nobody else, like, who's talking to anybody, right? A lot of these guys vent on YouTube or whatever, but most of them just like read comments, watch the video, like, don't like, maybe they just pass through. Reddit. Yeah, well, right. So, but how many people don't write something, right? How many people just read?
Dude, I was a lurker on Reddit for like years.
Yeah, I never really got into Reddit. I understand its importance now, but I sort of missed that train as well as many other social media trains. Somehow I knew something about computers and about how data could be used, so I sort of knew to shy away from those things, and I was never really interested in people all that much before. The interest in humans has been relatively recently found. Yeah. But it's to be quite honest, this relates to greed for me. I would call myself a greedy asshole. The reality is I'm trying to help myself just as much as I'm helping anybody else. And yeah, it seems like that's okay, right? I'm greedy enough to think that there's a good future for me in the future. Well, that seems a little redundant. There is a good future for all of us if we work hard enough for it. And seems like that's the only thing worth working for, right? If it's not a family, if it's well, if I'm going to be greedy and want the best future for myself, that means I need other people to make cool things for us, right? So
yeah, it's an indicative to providing all the comforts we take for granted in society in general. I mean, it depends on many different constituents working on a multitude of different tasks,
yeah,
a multitude of different goods and services to acclimate to the life that we know of now.
yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say I like plumbing, so indoor plumbing specifically. So it's nice to have houses and electricity and internet. If we can maintain certain comfort levels of comfort without making too much of a impact on our surroundings and other people, I think ultimately that's kind of the way to go. You talked about the scale of this vision. Well, let's call it a vision for now. But there's more to it even than that. So this is part of where the business comes into play, right? It's not just about us supporting each other and like talking it out, right? We're men. We got to do shit.
Yeah.
We all have skills. We all have intellect. So let's figure out how to put those to use. And it's gonna suck, right? Like we're gonna have to deal with society and a reality that doesn't look too great right now. But the more that we work towards something better and the more that we build, the more likely that we're going to come out on the other side of this ahead, right? As Rami likes to point out every once in a while.
Yeah. I think honestly, I do think there's like good times to be had because what I think in terms of like the United States, I think we might become somewhat of like how we see developing nations. We might become kind of like that, but that's kind of the more
What do you
reason.
mean by that? Can you give a little more detail on that? Just a little bit more.
Well, because we look at countries like Venezuela, Argentina, Lebanon, Nigeria, and like India and things like that. And then we say, okay, well, like whenever we hear inflation from those areas, like, oh, there's rampant inflation, we don't think about it as weird. We just think about it as like, okay, those are developing nations. Like even my parents, they came from Nigeria, and whenever you like they always said, I asked them like why they always say the difference between like here in Nigeria is that Nigeria you can't rely on the government. In Nigeria the government's corrupt. In Nigeria there's a bunch of inflation, like things like that. That's what they say. But then when you look at it here, you kind of see there's a bunch of inflation. You can't really trust the government. You kind of see those same things started to happen here. And granted, it may not be as bad because in Nigeria, you have the military walks around like with AK-47s and things like in malls and stuff like that. So we're not necessarily there in the United States right now. Will we ever get there? I'm not sure. But it's so it's not necessarily that bad, but it's kind of starting to trend towards like a developing nation kind of thing. And then also in places like, like the Philippines, also, for example, you have a bunch of homeless is a common thing, which that's starting to become kind of common here in the United States. And then like a demoralized populace, especially like the men. And we're starting to see that here in the United States, and it's becoming more pronounced like each decade, it seems like. And that it just
Demoralized by what exactly?
by the general state of the society you're in. Like to me, it has a lot to do with inflation, to be honest, because when you can't buy your own home, like when it's kind of hard for you to buy your own and maintain your own home, and then you like your options for like being a working person and like supporting yourself are to join up with big corporate or work for the government. You like it just you see like kind of limited options, then people start to give up. And that in places like Nigeria, for example, as like people's farmlands got taken away from them, you it started to become kind of like you had to join big oil, you had to work for the government or like a big healthcare organization within the country in order to like kind of support yourself, like in order to like have the scenario where you get your own home, you can have your own family, like just basics like that. And that's kind of how it's starting to be here in the United States. You like here it's not necessarily big oil. Here it might be like big tech, healthcare, and you work for the government, right? Like obviously there's still more options, and those options are easier to get to than in a place like Nigeria. But it seems like we're trending toward the wrong direction though. Like it seems like the average person is getting less options to have like like the things that a human wants for the most part, which is their own place to live, like
Right.
the
A
option to have
stable
a
future,
family.
basically.
Exactly. Like the option to have a family if they want one, like the cost of
Right.
living not being too out of their control, and like them understanding how society works. That's like here you're kind of
We've
society's
been
getting away
stealing
from
from the
people.
future for a while now, it seems like.
Yeah.
We used to borrow, but now we've just been outright stealing from the future for a while.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's what leads to the demoralization of especially young people. But in a place like
Your microphone has been breaking up a little.
okay, I just said like that's what's been leading to the demoralization, I think. And in third world countries, that process has already like the beginnings of that process is kind of long ago. So now they're at an
Right.
advanced stage of like the decay or whatever you want to call it. But here in the United States, to me, I'm thinking that we're like in the beginning stages. So at some point, we're going to be in an advanced stage. And by that point, it's like, I want to be, I don't necessarily want to be one of those people like who are demoralized, right? And you have a lot of people who are trying to like sound the alarm and warn people, and myself included. But if people aren't going to listen to it, then at some point, what can you do, right? You just try to build your network as much as possible, in my opinion, which is, I think, what we're trying to do here. And you like
Like
work,
parallel
do what you
society,
can.
so to speak.
Say
That
that
would
again.
be the idea. That's the only peaceful way or non-violent way that I can come up with.
Yeah, yeah. So you gotta like look at it. You gotta look at it
Well,
as be as positive as possible, which like I think we try to do, but
yeah,
also recognize that if people aren't going, if you notice things that are happening that are gonna lead a certain way, like you don't want to go that way, you try to go the way that you try to go, and see who's going to follow you. Hopefully those people in that skill, like with the amount of skill sets we have, we can just kind of create like whatever we create, and then hopefully the whole, like the rest of the society, doesn't go the way of advanced decay. But whether it does or not, hopefully we'll be good, kind of. That's like my thinking.
There is something to the cycle of rebirth, right? Decay is not necessarily a bad thing.
That's true.
So some things need to decay, but not all things. And I think that's the point that a lot of people who say burn it all, right? They're missing a little bit of nuance there. Some people would say that's throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
They clearly see things that don't work, but the daunting task is to keep what does work without burning everything around it.
Sure, yeah. And the interesting part about all of this is the guys that we seem to be targeting, the area that we seem to be finding ourselves in, say, and maybe I'm assuming too much for the both of you, so I'll have to get you some clarification on where you guys are with all this. But the idea is that we're working with guys who probably do want to go their own way, and maybe some of them don't have the means to set up, there's something to be said for figuring out how to run a farm for yourself. But if guys want to try to figure out how to run a farm, I'm potentially working on getting land and buildings and stuff set up so that if people want to work and see if they can pull that off, they can give it a try. But they're going to see how hard life really was back in the day. We've had it really good for a long time, and that seems like it's going to change rather drastically in the near future here, as there are less and less skilled tradesmen around to keep things in repair. You've seen those old malls and stuff and buildings
exactly. I mean, I
go to
see
ruin.
them.
That will become more. That will likely become more common.
Exactly. It goes back, like, it's developing nations, man. Like developing nations, they have buildings in ruins, and it's not even uncommon at all, like, to just see like some buildings in ruins. And here it's already happened. It's happened in big cities, but now that it's like getting out of just the big city, where like people, like, your suburban mom is like starting to notice some stuff like this. I think, like, that's why I think it's like getting to not a great point here.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you expect something like this from Detroit, but like here in my hometown of like Roseville near Sacramento, it's like, I don't know.
Well,
like you can start to see seeping out.
It seems like the rich are mistaken about something. If they buy up all the assets and they own everything, if nobody else ever has the money to buy them back, then all those guys have is really like a bunch of taxes to pay on properties.
Exactly.
So, and if nobody's living on those properties, then they get dilapidated. So, because nobody's taking care of them, or that's another expense that these guys are paying. So, the rich, a lot of people are not seeing the long game here in any sort of sense, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Everybody is being rather myopic in their view of what's going down in the world, or what's actually happening. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to. I would consider myself an introvert, but I am going drastically outside of my comfort zone to reach out to other people to try to understand the world a little bit better, because I think that I have very little understanding of what's actually happening in the world and how big events really are unfolding right now as we speak. And it's not necessarily about the sparks that you see in the media. It's all the stuff that we don't see every day in between, person to person, every transaction that happens between humans. When that starts breaking down, like if that breaks down, that can fall apart rapidly. Is the unfortunate truth. So, and we've seen that in cities like you mentioned in Detroit. It's unfortunate, right? Like it doesn't have to be that way. People don't have to treat each other that way. That's the interesting part about all of this. Other humans are making the choice to treat each other that way and maintain, this sort of culture, right?
Because they got no money.
To me, it boils down. If I were to utilize some sort of sixth sense, like my imagination, if you would, there's a precedent that is attempted to be set among the majority of the constituents in this country. That is to say, expect less. This is what your way of life is turning into, so you might as well deal with it. And I would think that the best way to counter it is to rebuild the incentives to network with one another, because that's the only way that things are actually built and maintained.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as it is right now, I mean, everyone is situated in the digital world. They don't have the means or the wherewithal to physically navigate these situations with other people. So that to me is what's kind of choking the lifeblood of society out. Is we're being conditioned to expect less out of life, so in turn that would create a negative feedback insofar as saying, oh, I mean, if I'm not gonna get a house, if I'm not gonna get the things I need in life to build a respectable lifestyle, then what's the point in me of even getting to know my neighbor?
Yeah.
Or building some sort of business venture with someone that could potentially help me out, or build the stepping stone to whatever it is I want out of life.
Sure. There's a general malaise in the populace, especially among men, as they have been losing their the
authority they have over the young lives.
Yeah. Oh, say it again.
It's a sense of authority that we used to have as men, of
sure,
to govern our own way in life. That's being choked out.
Well, as head of the household, as somebody who used to work in as part of a company, and what you did actually mattered to the company. So what you did and said during the day at work was an actual meaningful contribution to something that actually affected your life or somebody else's life, or you knew how you were connected to the network of people around you. And as we lose touch with our neighbors, and this is where the internet has been playing such a large role in all of this, it's not so necessary to have those kind of connections, because we can get pseudo connections from the internet, right?
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis these types of talks, or watching somebody, the parasocial relationships that happen on YouTube and other such streaming services, right? OnlyFans exploding, right? Most of these people are desperate for some kind of connection. And because they can't get it from person to person, because, well, basically most men are gross to most women, let's say, right? At this point in time. I'm under the impression, as I study more and more psychology, that actually men are the ones who feel a deeper emotion, right? Maybe women are better at controlling it, but shit, do men get either rage or depression or loneliness? men are the ones who actually feel like the depths of what it means to be like a feeling human being, I would say. And women can experience that, but they're more adept at handling their emotions, so they don't often go to those extremes, let's say.
Yeah, because they
Whereas
offload it.
we're getting a generation after generation of men who have no idea how to control their emotional energy.
Yeah, because women they offload it by like talking to each other. Men generally offload it by like working or
because we were
you know,
stigmatized too. Back in the day, you had boys clubs and like cigar lounges, or you went to the barbershop, or you did something. You had your pack or your crew or whatever.
mhm.
We've been told to be isolated these days.
Yeah, because it's like it to me it's like a combo of like purchasing power and then like just not like work that isn't really um it's not fulfilling. It's like unfulfilling work and like loss of purchasing
Yeah,
power, I think. Because men
yeah,
men would usually they would work or they would like go to places that like they would go to different like for like a cigar lounge or a barber shop or like some kind of boys club, like you would need like you need like some kind of funds. It would always be like men would go do things where like you would need like some kind of like funds or like societal clout or something like to go to that club, like it would like
sure.
mean something. But now now like I always go back to loss of purchasing power, like the loss of purchasing power and like this not really fulfilling work. Now dudes don't really they don't even feel like they don't even
Why
feel
work when it
welcome.
doesn't do anything for you?
Yeah, it's just like it's almost like pointless. They're like, okay, why would I even do something
Sure.
like that? It's like more effort like to go to a boys club than it's worth, unless it's on the internet. Like you know what I mean?
Well, that's the point that we've we've been sold that idea. I think though that there's so much more to it than that. And loss of purchasing power it does have an effect. However, that shouldn't be the barrier to entry is moving higher, but the answer to that actually isn't a that's that shouldn't be viewed as a barrier to entry. It should be more like a call to adventure, and that's kind of the twist on all of this that has been placed on the young man by society. It seems like is that there's no more call to adventure, right? Why do you think Space Force is blowing up so big lately? It's because it's the only thing left for most guys. It's like they're not going to get a woman. They're not going to have that great job. They don't have enough motivation to be great, and anything less than that will get them close enough to nothing that it's not even worth the effort to try if you already know that you can't do it, right? And I think people are selling themselves short, so we've got to turn around some of that thinking, because there's a lot of people out there, and I think there's a lot of things that guys can do. So that's why I'm here, right? I'm trying to figure out ways of helping myself, and maybe I can share some of those ways with other people, or at least help them stay accountable to their own way, and then maybe we can all improve a little bit, right? And then maybe business opportunities arise, or you know somebody, if I buy some property and start a farm, right? And some guys really want to just want to work on a farm, like let's figure that out, right? We can try to set up businesses and corporations and stuff like that. There's all sorts of possibilities, especially when we have enough people with good ideas put together. Let's say sorting through all that will be something that I'm not particularly skilled at, but I'm working on it. organization is not a strong suit, but it is one that I'm working on as quickly as I possibly can, trying to be more diligent every day about organization. But ideally, what comes out of this is all of us getting what we want out of life, let's say, right? So it seems like that's a worthwhile endeavor to put up with all the crap that we're going to have to deal with to get there.
Mm-hmm. I believe a fair question to ask at this point is what is the base archetypical force or perspective that we call upon on to instigate this notion of being called to arms that would kind of set this sort of thing into motion here.
Sure. Well, that's something that potentially we could all discuss.
Like a rallying.
If it's not the women, if it's not the notions of building a family, then what is it?
You mean like a rallying cry?
Well, Rami, I've told you already, it does have to kind of be the notion of building a family. I wanted to say greed and I wanted to say self-interest, but it's got to be more than that, because that only gets you so far. So it would have to be like, this is community. We're building a tribe, right? Like a team. If we're like a football team or something like that, right? We've all got roles to play. It's important as hell, because everybody else is going to be attacking us. So how do we all work together in a way that helps us get to our goals, and how the hell do we get over our conflicts of interests, or whatever else happens as we all work together? Those are excellent questions. I have some ideas, but family, yeah. What else? Who else do you work harder for? I don't know, right? You don't always get to choose who your relatives are, but I mean, you can choose your family, right?
Certainly.
Yeah. The family that you create, you can kind of choose that. Maybe not the family you're born into.
Sure. Well, I mean, greed, self-interest. If you want cool things, if you want a better future and a chance at surviving, with some cool guys, or at least people that you can work with, those are all other incentives. Beyond
That was 80s. That was 80s.
What's that?
That was 80s? The 80s. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Like the whole greed is good, and like the self-interest. That was like the initial response, like, to inflation. I feel like in America.
Well, I mean, if you use it, I mean, if you think of your emotions as tools, right? Like, greed can be used as a useful tool. Most of the time, people let it get out of hand and let it make them make stupid decisions. But maybe you can harness things, right? Emotional energy. But once again, harnessing emotional energy, that's like a mentorship thing that old men used to pass down to young men. And somehow there was a huge disconnect, or I think boomer men were like distracted somehow. I'm not clear on this part of history, but somehow there was a gap in the link between mentorship of younger generations and older generations, somewhere around like the millennial to boomer, Generation X or whatever, somewhere in that time frame. And so now we have a few generations of young men who haven't been getting any mentorship at all in terms of like emotional coaching. Like how do I, when I see red, how do I channel that into something that doesn't get me into trouble, right? Or how do I take my sexual energy, like this tension that I feel all the fucking time that's like digging into the back of my skull, how do I use that to like work out harder, like focus harder, or like work longer, or start doing the things that I need to do, like start eating healthier, right? Doing the things that I need to do to improve my life, improve the quality of my life. Those are the kinds of things that I think will be motivating some of the guys that we're going to be getting. I mean, as far as the people who matriculate or trickle down to this area of YouTube or our area of understanding of the world of reality, I think those are the kind of guys that are practical, right? But with that practicality comes the camaraderie, right? It's when we work together. It's when we talk together. It's when we have these conversations every single week, and everybody's here, on time. Which, once again, that was on me last time. So I'm calling myself to account there. When you start doing that more, I think that's what develops that camaraderie, and that's what we've all kind of lost out on because video games, right? It's cool as shit. You get to talk to your friends, but you get to do it and like interact with them in a very structured way and a very goal-oriented, like team-oriented way.
Yeah.
So the internet just makes it too easy to interact in ways that are more like on a more shallow level, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're interacting in a more personal realm, let's say, you got to deal with people, like emotions, because that's when like actual physical effort gets done, right? We want it's not video games are more like mental exercises, right? You use your fingers to do outputs, but you're solving a puzzle basically, right? With your hands, more or less. Whereas reality, life, right? Actually physically working and like using your hands, that requires a different kind of energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's being lost to the internet right now. And some of the emotional like rage that came with testosterone is what drove people to success, in past times. And as we lose testosterone levels in younger and younger generations of men, I think we're losing that kind of vital element to get up and have the energy to actually interact with other men. Because, like, let's be real here, we all shit test each other, right? Like, we all test each other's metal, but it's to a point, right? Like, it's for a purpose. It's because we want each other to improve, and we want the best quality people around ourselves, right? If we are going to interact, we want to make sure that we're interacting with people who are like on our level or above our level, ideally, so that we can either learn from them or help inspire each other, right? Some of that is going to look like metal testing, right? Some of that's going to look a little like shit testing because, well, men are very effeminate these days, and so we don't understand how to test each other and how to talk to each other, communicate. Not necessarily challenge, but like assertion, right? Like competency. Like meritocracy is what comes to mind. Those are the kinds of things that we as men have kind of lost touch with over the years, and I'm trying to recapture that. But damn it, old men are stubborn and they don't like to talk much. But I've been talking to as many of them as I can to try to understand, like, how they did things back then and how, like, what it was like in the war and what was the thought process of people going through through some of the stuff that they went through, biographies and autobiographies, the thoughts of people who have been through, like, basically hell, right, or whatever the closest approximation to hell there is on earth, right? So yeah, it's
So in essence, it's the promise of some mainframe that helps address shortcomings of each member of said tribe or said social situation.
Right. And that's
it's a self-regulating machine.
Yes, but it's a tumultuous process, right? it can become refined, right? Like if you guys understand what like well-organized businesses and organizations can do, right? Uh, it's nearly limitless, especially once you amass enough wealth and influence. Basically, you can do anything, right? As a group, as an entity. Um, so if we,
Yeah, in sports, it's like you want to win the championship. So that's why in sports it's so easy. Or like, I mean, easier because like, if you're playing football, you want to win the Super Bowl. If you're
yeah,
in basketball, you want to win like the finals, you know. Like so
men want to win. I mean, it's like it's inborn, right? Like men want to win. So that's what I'm trying to say is like we're talking about the MGTOW guys here, right? And especially black pilled guys,
Mhm.
and they're mostly want to just go their own way, which is why I'm saying instead of going their own way,
Like what
do something close to that, but work with us, right? If we
yeah.
can't, if you were gonna leave this society, like why not work with us instead of just going at it on your own, right? It's some guys want to do that, right? Some guys are just made to be alone in a cabin in the woods, and that is them. They've got to do them, right? But I
Mhm.
think a lot of guys get to where we are, and what they're really looking for is like somebody just tell me how I win, right? Like how the
Yeah.
hell do I get out of this hellscape that is my life? And like I get none of what I wanted in my life. None of this is working out the way that I was told, the way I thought it would work, or I'm getting exactly what I thought I would, and I'm still miserable, and I don't know why. Right? That's what a lot of that's what gets a lot of guys to this area, and this is like kind of this is one of the last stops, right? And let's say
Mhm.
on the express train, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it really is.
so so giving people well on the last stop there's not a whole lot of good options. And what I'm really trying to do is like build a beaten path off of the platform and say, hey, it sucks, guys, but if we work hard enough, maybe we can make something decent off to the side here, right? And maybe we don't have to go all the way down, that path. And people want to win, right? Like people,
Yeah,
it's
people
not where
want to
guys
win.
want to just like give up on life. They just don't see any other alternative at that point, right? This is the intellectual side of the pattern seeking and the ability to kind of map out your life in sometimes a subconscious way, which really sucks for some guys because they don't understand
Yeah.
their pattern recognizing capabilities very
Yeah.
well. But sometimes even subconsciously you get to the point where your brain just kind of knows that there is no happy ending for you, right? Like with what with what you understand about reality and life, there is no win for you. And I think I'm trying to post up a sign here and say, yeah, like it's not a great win, but it's something, right? It's better than nothing. And at least you get some people who maybe give a fuck if you live or die, right?
Yeah. I
That's
think
that's where it takes a spiritual turn. I mean, and it's hard not to, because that's in essence more or less the final frontier from where we are now. I mean,
Well, as far as we know, nobody comes back. Yeah.
well, I'm not even talking about crossing over, so to
Oh, just
speak.
like the spiritual side in general.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
just finding that more like refined, that more subtle, that more profound meaning in all of it.
okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be spiritual, but I see what you mean.
exactly. I agree with that. It doesn't have to be, but it's hard not to put it into that context
Sure.
at that certain point. It's very difficult not to. But I think
Sure.
we're trying to find that balance, because not everyone is turned on by that rhetoric. If we were
Sure.
to if we were to start to impose that rhetoric, it might pose as a turnoff. And
Well,
we don't want to do that. We want to strike some sort of balance that appeals to that sort of higher meaning sort of notion, but without the rhetoric, or as little
right.
as possible.
Well, let's put it this way: do you at least care? You at least care a little bit about me at this point because I'm here willing to talk with you, but also I have potentially some business propositions for you that you may be interested in.
Exactly. There's a degree of empathy that has taken place because of what we've shared with each other so far.
Well, there's something to be said for that, yeah.
And with that business thing, I mean, okay, now there's something tangible for me to bite down on, so that
right
now we can put our nose to the grindstone.
Exactly. Well, that's the idea.
It's that physical attribute that you mentioned before. Men have to do shit.
Exactly. I 100% agree. And the reality, it's not a solution, but it sure makes life a hell of a lot easier to avoid depression if you're busy, right? Like if you're busy with something that you think actually would help you, eventually, maybe we become friends, right? Or family, or we develop other sorts of one-on-one relationships. I don't know how any of this will exactly work out. Largely, I imagine things will be decentralized in terms of governance, but in terms of interaction, just being here, right? Like we're talking about to each other. As I spoke with you earlier, I wanted to talk to you about material things that we could do for you personally, right? And you too, Romy. Like what can we do for each other, even if it's a small thing, even now, right? And what that does is starts building up, trust for each other, right? And like if we can do these small things, maybe we stumble every once in a while. Maybe we suck the first 200 times that we try this, but if we keep on working at it, right? Maybe on the 201st try, we actually get something going, and maybe that builds something that is meaningful for us, right?
Yeah.
I imagine that a lot of guys that get here don't have a whole lot of friends because, well, let's just be real here. Once you get to this point, it's hard to be around normies, as the colloquialism is, I think, pronounced. So
Yeah.
it's understandable that that guys who come to this point would be seeking. I don't want to say companionship because that word has been kind of disused, but it's something along it is something along the lines of camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
These two guys in the foxhole, they're not going to be unfriendly or they're not going to be rivals for long, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't survive in a foxhole with your enemy for very long, especially when there's other things out there that are worse than the two of you in there, in that little hole. So that's sort of the way I think about it, right? Like some of this would be spiritual, right? If you believe in that sort of thing, we're all sort of connected, right? There may be God or whatever religious upbringing people have had. They play a role in some of this as well. But there are practical applications too, as you said earlier, as far as the business goes, and then being here, right? Like us talking, this isn't nothing, right? Maybe we don't accomplish much materially at this point, but at some point, our talks will turn into things happening in our physical, in our physical worlds. And we've got to start planning for that, especially if we all want to be moderately successful in the future. I would say, if we put our minds together, the idea would be that more minds are better than less minds, and the less blind spots and the more strengths that we have to rely upon to put things together, the more likely we are to be successful. That's sort of the idea. So there's all sorts of applications to this idea and process. The devil is in the details, as they say. And of course, communism never really works. So it's got to be like a meritocracy, right? Like it's got to be a competency-based sort of interaction system. Not everybody makes it, I guess. Potentially, I'm not clear on that. I'm not clear on that just yet. So it's one of those things where if people are on board and they're willing to give it a try, maybe we do trial basis types things. But the idea would be to at least give people some chance at hope, right? Like they're barreling down this train, and once you take the red pill, and like once life has like knocked you down enough, and guys start telling you like basically unraveling your whole life, and you realize just how insignificant of a statistic you were really in the grand scheme of things. That train goes fast, right? And it goes downhill, right? Spiraling. So it can get pretty frightening pretty quickly, and I think a lot of young men just are not prepared for that level of bleakness, right? Life is suffering, sure, but it's not all suffering, right? Which is why it can be worth it, and you don't have to suffer as much as we are now, it seems. Young men are suffering, the world over, and always really have. We were doing all right for ourselves with the agricultural era, and then the industrial and technological area for a while, but things started going awry, as we've noticed in the past, umpteen decades, right? So there's just not a whole lot of hope for any other outcome than either the release or you find something else worth suffering for, and a lot of people do, but there's a significant portion who don't. So I'm trying to give them something to latch onto, right? It won't be great. It's not going to be perfect. None of this is going to happen the way that I ever envision anything ever happening. But I'm here. I'm trying. Talking with you guys. Could be playing video games, right? Could be twiddling my thumbs, improving myself.
Maybe playing the new Force game that just came out.
Yeah, right. I could be swinging on a 80-pound whatever thing, Rami, right in that video.
An 80-pound dildo. Dude,
gosh, yeah.
I love that video. I love that video, man.
But you guys, we're here for a reason, right? Like, this is something, and we understand. Well, guys understand very quickly what that state. There's a lot of intelligent men out there, let's say, who are intelligent in the way of pattern recognition, not in emotional intelligence. So one can
that's what like women were supposed to be for. Like now we got to do it all.
Women took on work and men have to take on emotional intelligence. It's basically what the trade-off was, because women used to keep men in balance when men go into a rage, like, well, I watched a woman on YouTube. I forget her name, and I'll try to give her credit when I can. But she said women used to fuck the war out of men, and she's not wrong. Or like basically fuck the depression out of men, or whatever, right? Anything that came as like emotional turmoil, women used to have men's back and say like, I got you, I'm with you. And that's like, what man doesn't want to hear that? As I keep on coming to this conclusion, it keeps on reminding me of myself. But what man wouldn't say yes to a woman that like met all of his needs, right? Like if it was indeed actually the woman of his dreams, like if it was actually her, he would say yes in a heartbeat, no matter how hardened any man was in his entire life. If it was actually that woman, and he could, be sure it was that woman, then he would say yes in a heartbeat, obviously. So men wanted and need that sort of thing, and as that's been withdrawn from them, especially younger and younger, like these single moms and whatnot, and these effeminate men raising, more and more children with low emotional intelligence. These young men just can't deal with it, right? Like we're seeing the rise in like preteens now committing suicide. Like, what the hell business does a 13-year-old have thinking about how bleak life is that they would take their own?
I know, right? Exactly. That's facts, man. Like that's so true.
So we're basically society, like the world is failing a huge worldwide shit test, and we're all shit testing each other basically, and we're shit testing each other into the ground at this point, which is really foolish, right? Like we're basically playing chicken with each other, and the bottom is something like disaster, right? Like for the human race. So we're headed there fairly rapidly, unfortunately. It's interesting to see that all the elements that are in play to counteract that. I think religion is going to start playing a larger and larger role in the future here, as people get more and more desperate for answers.
Religion already has. It already has. I actually was watching a sermon from this guy that I just stumbled upon, and he was going about the current event things and how that's tying into this vast eternal repercussion that we could be heading into if we don't get our act together. So
certainly, I mean, some people say it's Armageddon already, or Revelations, or whatever, right? I mean, viruses. There's locust plagues in China.
Yeah, I heard about the locusts.
There's all sorts of things happening all across the planet, and it's hard to deny that there is some correlation with what is in the Bible and specifically Revelations and what is happening now. Having said that, these things are natural events, so of course they do happen. It's not as though I place too much emphasis on it, but sure. It is telling, right? It is telling when we can't handle stuff like that, or when it causes disasters or problems, things that we should otherwise normally be able to aid each other with or recognize are now disasters, right? Like humanitarian relief these days has not really been doing its job, as far as I can tell. So our dollars, money, charities, things like that, they're just not going as far as they used to. They're getting tied up in the bureaucracy of things. They're getting, the corruption of governments, right? Greasing hands or whatever. And then again, stealing from the future, right? Inflation. That's also been another problem lately. So America used to be the most charitable country in the world, in terms of. Shouldn't say that, but I think that's true. So I'm going to stick with it until somebody proves me wrong. But it's been proven over and over again that even a lot of the middle class Americans back in the day, when they were well secured and they had extra money, they tithed to like church organizations, or they contributed to like food pantries, or volunteered for whatever, right? If something went down in the town, and there weren't enough police or firefighters, who do you think volunteered, right? It's like
the local guy.
Yeah, right, exactly. The reserves. So once again, it sort of comes back to that community building that we've lost back in the day. But I digress.
So, like, to really progress our discussion in a fashionable manner, kind of just before I head out for a second, because I need to take care of some kitchen stuff, maybe just like grab a beer. I want to I want to like present to you guys like to kind of just kick things off on like a microscopic level. It's just what are some palatable things, some uh, practical, approachable things that we can do, the three of us talking, to keep us accountable to a certain task that we've had in mind. And you know, you were kind of addressing it to me as like, what can y'all do for me? Let's expand that to all of us. What can we do? What's like one thing that's relevant in our lives right now, albeit how small it is, that we can do for each other to kind of just maybe check something off our list, no matter how small it is. I'm going to excuse ourselves now. I'm going to excuse myself now, but just something to think about that I kind of want to expound upon when I get back.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Practical application.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Well, Rami, do you want to talk about the practical application, or do you want to wait until he gets back and talk about something else?
Yeah, we can I don't know, we'll just like kind of keep going. Like we can go over practical application now and then like go over it again when he gets back.
Okay.
Like for okay, you
go ahead.
I was just like for me, I'm just I'm just trying to post YouTube videos, man, and then like healthcare network. That's like that's most what like I'm trying to do now. Like yeah.
I actually talked to James about that earlier.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm mostly like that's all I can like cuz that's like my skill set essentially. Like that's kind of what I got
so
for now.
There's a couple of things here. First of all, we will all have to expand out of our comfort zones, right? We will all have to always continually expand our skill sets. That's
true.
That's the unfortunate reality of the world that we live in these days, right? We can't afford necessarily to not be always improving, let's say.
That's true. Yeah, I'm trying
to.
I
mean, that's not necessarily true, right? Like, if people want to go and do their own thing or whatever and going their own way, right? Like, I get it. So, I get that. I'm just saying, like, I am trying to continually improve because that's one thing that I need to work on. Like, the only thing that I am like holding on to as an anchor for life, basically, is try, and I'm working on expanding upon that.
try and hope. Try and hope are two pretty. Those are two pretty solid. Like they're pretty good anchors. Try and hope. I would say like I have like a lot of hope. Try. I could have more try. I could have more try in my life.
Hope is one that. Hope is one that I struggle with. I'm not clear on whether or not I have hope. I have try, and I am getting comfortable with that, and I'm trying to make other things to build upon, but I don't think hope. I tried hope for a while, and that didn't quite work out. So I'm not clear on if I need to give it another shot. I've been told I do, but I'm not certain on how to take a new approach to it. Some people have been suggesting meditation, so I'm working on that.
Yeah, I mean,
catch me up really quick, guys. I was out for like a minute.
Sure.
And we just basically talked about like so I just said what I was trying to do in terms of, like you were saying, the like the action we
Can
could
you
take
hear me?
now.
Can you speak a little bit, Rami, please?
We basically the action that we could take now, like you were saying, and I was saying how basically my YouTube channel and then healthcare network is what I'm
Fading.
trying. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, you're still kind of fading out. I don't know if
Yeah.
okay.
Here's one thing we can do. I can get Rami some money if he didn't already, and maybe he could buy himself a better microphone or computer or something.
Yeah, I mean this one, it hasn't completely crapped out yet. Can you hear me now?
Oh, it's bad. Rami, it's bad.
What, really? You can't.
So
My
what
thing
I
is
need
lighting
next,
up on Discord.
Oh,
well, I have using a condenser mic to speak with you guys, and that has a interface that amplifies.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're actually controlling your audio input, or your input, I should say.
Hmm.
I think like the interface would be a good first step. I'm just to press that, but I digress.
Yeah, we can get more formalized about all this in the future, right? I think it's pretty clear that Rami, we need to get him either a dedicated microphone for his computer somehow, or just an upgraded computer.
Dang, I guess. What about now? Can you hear me now?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's
Yes.
getting worse by the week, man. I feel like this
It
mic is
seems
getting
that
worse by
way.
the week.
You used to be able to, like, if you talked loud enough or long enough, it picked you up clearly, but now it just fades in and out no matter what you do.
That's pretty scary. Like, I hope
All
this
right,
doesn't
well,
crap out completely.
oh, I couldn't even hear you there.
Dang, you couldn't hear me on that, really? That's
Okay, can you hear you now?
okay. Okay. I hope we'll just keep doing this. But basically, what James, what you were saying, we just talked more about that. So I said, in terms of things that I'm doing now, I just went back to the YouTube channel and healthcare network. That's basically all I got, because I said that those were my skill sets. And then Yoiman was saying how we should expand upon our skill sets, which I said that's true. And then we got into a conversation about hope and trying being two anchors that we could possibly have for life in general.
Notice that he said trying, not crying. Crying with a T.
Yeah, trying with the T.
It's pretty based on attitudes that you carry out or carry out this process.
Yeah, I don't know how, as far as the area that we occupy goes, I'm not sure how unique we three are in terms of our ability to talk and work together. It seems like Morphed and A20 may be interested in joining us, but they've been more off and on. So yeah, I'm not clear on how many other people will be interested in the type of content that we may produce here, but it should at least be an interesting ride as long as we're all, teaming up here.
Yeah, I mean, even if that comes to Rami kind of siphoning off all the material that we're covering,
Sure.
and just him expounding on that on his own personal videos.
Sure.
I think just the platform that he's developed so far and the editing that he's implemented his videos so far makes his platform the best possible medium.
I would say most sophisticated at this point. Rami is, yeah.
Yeah, to relay, any sort of bits of information that we have to offer so far.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's the idea would be to bring together whatever information that we have, So progress would look something like this. The first step is we talk about even wanting to start something, right? And now that we're at the point where it seems like a good idea, we should talk about what exactly that looks like, as you've mentioned. Some things that would being held accountable would help. I am the type of person that the more I know somebody else is interested in my time or my attention, the more likely I am to want to spend time with them, especially if it's on, some mutual endeavor, right? So in general, just talking more would help keep me accountable. Just you guys being online to chat and just talking about whatever. Most of the time, I can multitask. I can be talking about, I can be talking about the business or something non-technical related, and be working, on either coding, doing some research, reading through documentation, filling out, writing out whatever needs to be written out. Can be doing all those things simultaneously or multitasking to some extent. Those are the kind of things that would help me in like the immediate sense, and something that I think wouldn't cost you guys too much, right? If you wanted to move to twice a week or whatever, and either we shorten these conversations down to an hour or so, or we can just have multiple, 3 to 4 hour conversations. It just depends on whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm all for like just going towards the organic approach. I don't really
Sure.
like imposing strict time limits on a conversation because
Sure.
when we're done, and we know, and when we pretty much reach the limit to whatever session that we're affiliated with at the time.
Often I notice people recognizing that we're circling back on certain topics. And the funny part is sometimes they think, well, in the course of conversation or debate, perhaps, they think I'm circling back on a topic, but it's funny to note that they're actually the ones circling back on their, whatever their presupposed idea about reality was. So it's just interesting to make note of that every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can end. Of course, we can always end things organically, but starting things organically, what does that look like for us?
Well, let me sort of recap from where we are so far. I mean,
Sure. Sometimes I jump around a little. Just if I jump too far, let me know. We can trace back.
Sure. So from when I left off to walk off and do whatever I had to do, I kind of put this. I kind of placed this questioning on the table and said what it is, what sort of tangible things we can do to keep each other on track, so to speak. From what I understood from Rami's standpoint, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just from the standpoint of kind of maintaining and improving the quality of his video content. For you, Ben, it was more so along the lines of just having material to talk about in general, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Creating some sort of camaraderie or friendships.
Yeah, that would definitely start out with dialogue. Even if it's just shooting, even if it's just shooting the shit. I mean, it could have been anything at all, but it's just establishing that sort of trust in terms of, things we could talk about, and then sporadically, like maybe relaying solutions or certain notions or certain ideas we had as a result. Okay, and I guess perhaps circling back to me, just to kind of round things out in a way. I don't know if you caught what I put on the general thread, but I'm in the process of getting my entire genome sequence through this service. Yeah, through this service that I encountered online. I think it was probably like last night or something like that. And because the things that I believe that I'm dealing with this acute brain fog situation that even though I know I have things to do, the what I would assume to be the sort of unique physiological traits of my brain kind of prevent me from doing that. Be it, I don't know, based on my environment or maybe sort of the domestic disturbances I experienced as a younger person. I don't know what has instigated this condition in me, but I'm sort of out on this crusade to kind of cat and mouse this condition into a corner where I could approach it as scientifically as possible. One of those things that I concluded was getting my genome sequence, getting as much information in terms of my genetic material as possible so that I know it's like, okay, maybe I'm prone to ADD, or maybe there's something about my environment that's kind of inhibiting my mental faculties from expressing itself as positively as possible. And with that, I mean, it's an intense process. Once I get my genetic material back to the lab, it's going to take about 2 to 3 months for me to receive back that information. So until then, I can't exactly be like staying on my own, twiddling my thumbs and hoping for the best and not doing anything. So I mean,
Sure.
As I've stated before, multiple times on my channel with the videos I've uploaded, I have an acute problem with visual based cue like stimulation, like namely like pornography. And while I acknowledge that, at least from a biological perspective, that sort of release is healthy, what it's evolved to with the technology we have isn't. Like it's being utilized in a bastardized manner, as good as I could put it. So I sort of have this idea, and I've used porn blocking software before, but I've never really had anyone to concretely like monitor my usage so that I know for a fact in the back of my mind, okay, there's someone on the other side kind of moderating, the content that I would sporadically kind of engage myself in so that I can set this, so that I can at least utilize whatever sort of degree of neuroplasticity that I can to kind of get myself off that track towards more of a healthier track in terms of how my brain operates. So what I would what I was going to put on the table is that like maybe one of you guys could be my accountability partner in terms of like moderating the software that I run on my phone and on my computer, so that I don't have as much trouble just going on the hub and letting it rip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would like an accountability buddy.
Yeah, would someone like to be my accountability?
I think that's from a South Park episode or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what's wrong.
All right, all right.
So, for me, it's more of like a concrete routine thing that I think would help me, establish a healthier base of motivation and
Certainly.
maybe that'll help out with my brain fog. I don't know yet, but it's something. It's something for me to latch on to until I get more of that substantial projects underway that I sort of mentioned just now.
May I offer you a few thoughts?
Shoot.
Okay. First of all, be aware if you are going the route of semen retention that your levels of rage will increase and your irritability will increase drastically. Now, the key to all that would be to harness it, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about, recapturing some of that energy that you're letting go of. I think.
Well, if I were to just elaborate on that for a second.
Sure.
I bought my sex doll as an alternative channel for that release, because in my opinion, it's just the constant bouncing around from like video to video to video puts extra stress on the dopaminergic system of the brain, because it's like you're keeping those levels at an elevated rate for an extended period of time as long as you're on those sites.
Right.
Relative to I were just to engage with the doll.
Yeah, exactly.
That's gonna take shape in a more natural, excitement, and then peak, and then it just drops off, and it just, like, to me, it just feels more natural.
Sure.
But I know that other stuff is always there, so I'm not always going to resort to the doll.
Sure. Okay.
So if the doll is the only thing around, then that to me is going to put me in less of a deficit as if I were to log on to the hub.
Sure, right, and it's time too, right? It's
so
thought process. It's like setup, all that sort of thing, right?
It's just like my preferences of that stuff has become so like specified that it just takes me forever to find the right video.
Sure,
that's one of the most frustrating things in the world.
Sure, that can be understandable, right? And once again, even more time used because of that. So, okay, I understand what you mean. So, do you ever want to reach the point of absolutely no release, or are you comfortable with just, because I actually hear about like muscular performance enhancement after post ejaculation. So, and actually in women too, right? Like your heart rate is faster, and your muscles get like kind of flushed with blood, more or less. So. That's my understanding of like, it doesn't really matter one way or the other as long as you like understand how your energy works, and as long as you understand how to like not lose the parts that you want to keep, and you're letting go of the parts that you want to let go of. That's cool, right? Like, you do you, right?
Oh yeah, sure. And I can vouch for all that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, I've gone on bike rides with little in the ways of like a decline in performance, like after that sort of incident. So,
well, it should actually increase your performance if you do it within like 15 minutes right afterwards, right?
Oh shit, that's something like I really got to try.
Basically, if you have to fight for your life within like the next 10 minutes, use the first 5 minutes to like have sex with like a woman or something like that. That's basically then you will basically be in your like top physical like performance a few minutes after that is the it's like a sports science. I don't know, some on some YouTube video. They were testing out people, and it was a couple who were like boxers or something. She was actually the pro boxer, but ability, like her striking power, increased by some percentage, some significant percentage, and like her ability to like run, like her speed and power and endurance increased as well. So
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I might take a more conscious approach when it comes to that sort of sequence and events, and then
sure.
just be extra mindful of how it all takes shape.
Yeah. Make sure that your energy is right when you're doing all that stuff, right? Like you want to make sure that you're you're taking care of your body properly, and so it looks a little different for everybody. But if you want help in that area, then of course, what is the best way to help you? Just by talking with you every day, sending you text reminders. Do you need to set alarms? What kind of things would help you with that?
Well, yeah, it's as opposed to the things that I'm choosing not to do. That on the opposite side, there are things that I would need to do to kind of channel that energy and make sure it's not being flooded into the bad stuff. So
Sure.
There's quite an assortment of things that I have in my vicinity right now that I can engage in.
Okay.
That along with the blocking, that would positively apply myself to not not only distract myself, but to cultivate skills that would, hey, maybe the cultivation of these certain skills are going to put me in a better baseline of mood that'll kind of spiral into a positive feedback.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. It does work that way.
Yeah. I mean, I have my drum set here. I got, I do draw. I mean, I made the avatar for Rami's YouTube video. I made it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah,
That's
that was
good.
solid.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I get to enjoy it too. I get to see it.
Yeah, that was solid.
So I guess with the music thing, it'd be like, oh, maybe I got to record something and send it to one of you guys to make sure that I did do something, or I could just send maybe a photo of a picture that I drew that day, even if it's just like a rough ass sketch,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like do you? It sounds like you want some encouragement, right? Like the shit that you do matters. And I recently talked to a guy I've known for a while now, and he's a business partner of mine. But we're trying to be friends, and he basically has been painting a lot recently because that's just one of his creative outlets. And when the fire that you see in somebody's eyes when they are doing something that they're passionate about and they get to show it off, that's the kind of thing I like to see, right? I like to see that kind of fire in other people's eyes. When people are doing like what they do best, I think that's when I think that's hard to harness that in the right way because we want to do. There's real world application, and then there's what we want to do with our lives. So we got to balance that a little bit. But when I can see that fire in somebody's eyes, that's something that I appreciate about life, and that's something I enjoy, and that's something that I'm looking for in myself. So if I can help you find it, maybe that will help me find it. So if I can encourage you somehow to go after whatever endeavors that you're interested in, be it drumming or drawing, yeah, absolutely. If you want critique, I'm actually. You'd be surprised by what I could offer if you asked. So you have to ask.
I'll hold you to it. And it goes both ways. So I just like, anything you guys feel like I could provide some input of. I mean, I'll put my heart on my sleeve out there. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think being genuine is going to be important as we move forward. And if something is off, if something is wrong, if we don't agree, or something is left unsaid, we got to say that, right? You know what I mean? There's we can't leave things well enough. Life is not going to be kind enough to us to allow us to let things go unchallenged or unfortunately probably unfortified. So the idea would be that we've got to build each other up, and we've got to be, as close to reality as possible on that. And sometimes the truth isn't so fun, and reality isn't so fun. So we're gonna have to learn how to balance all of that. But as long as we're all being genuine, I don't see any reason why that will ever fail, right? I don't know. As you mentioned with the spiraling upward, or I mentioned that's how it works. I don't know where this stops. As Jordan Peterson likes to say, things can get bad when we let bad people do bad things, right? But we don't know how good things can get, and the stuff being made these days has been corrupted by entities that have no business, putting their paws into some of what's being developed, and as far as technology goes these days. That's something that I'm of particular interest in. Just as a side note, the development of technology, I think, is going to play a very important role in our future, and we've got to really get a handle on who gets to decide how we use things, right? So yeah, I'm no longer interested in letting the scientists who developed, Einstein or whatever, who developed nuclear fusion, right? Fusion. I'm no longer interested in allowing people to play games where they turn that into bombs. I want to turn that into power plants so we have energy for people, right? And that and we'll figure out how to make them safer and safer as we go from there. That's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of. We got to be more careful with who we allow to have technology and what we allow to be done with it, right?
Precisely. Yes.
So I think the name of the game right now is to be careful. So I want to encourage you guys to do the things that will fulfill you and help give you a sense of purpose and meaning in life, and will help motivate you to want to actually work, right? Like when you get good at music, kind of makes you want to do well at work so you can get back to your music, right? And ideally, eventually, you turn music into work, and it'll become something that you no longer, is your release. It's your occupation or your purpose.
Well, no, precisely. And it's just like I've already paved the way for that in terms of the vision I set out for myself. I mean,
that's great.
I'm 28 years old now. I'm not.
You're still a young man.
Oh yeah. That's what I was getting at. It's like I have the time. I haven't really set a certain deadline. I mean, I used to kind of hold that deadline to heart because in terms of how other people are progressing in life, it was kind of like saying,
sure,
a parade passed by, but I've already gotten over that. It's
you go at your own pace.
Yeah, it's like as far as my physical vicinity goes, it's kind of just me with my own bearings, and
right.
I have the things I need to sustain myself. Now it's just where do I go from here? It's there's just only one way. There's only one way but going up.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well, right? The alternative sucks.
And it doesn't matter if I have more salt than pepper in my hair by the time I get there.
Sure,
I've already gotten there.
Yeah.
I'll have something to show for it by then.
Right. That's the mindset. Yeah, that's the mindset you need. May I offer a few other thoughts that I had about some of your previous statements?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I encourage you to continue to avoid pornography. I think that will only end up making your life better in the long run. Although in the short term, it's an addiction, man. It's going to be tough to get away from that. And the reality is, you're going to make it harder on yourself probably by fighting it so hard. So I'm glad that you're asking for some help with, being held accountable for that. And I will do, if we need to set up a schedule, or whatever, just talk to me, right? And we can figure out how to help keep you accountable. And don't be afraid to tell us if you mess up, man. Like, that's part of the process. That's what I'm trying to get at. With the other part is, you may want to taper, right? Like, you may want to understand, like, it's not about quitting. It's about understanding why you needed to start in the first place. Do you get what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. It's all about like, if I didn't have that in the first place, I wouldn't know what it's like to kind of walk through those trenches in the first place. I mean,
Sure. Well, that's true. But also, it was born of, like, a loneliness, right? And a real need, right? Like, you got to understand your biological drives, but you also have to understand your emotional drives.
absolutely. And it kind of brings me back to what Rami and I was discussing in our last kind of session there, and I kind of brought up the aspect of intimacy.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just the sexual aspect of it. I mean, any sort of day-to-day interaction we have is going to compromise of some circumstance of intimacy, and if there are certain archetypes of that we're not fulfilling on a day-to-day basis, or on a basis that encompasses multiple years of our lives, that's going to turn into a deficit, and that deficit has to be filled through some sort of behavior,
True.
substance, or like, that's just how it is. That's the human condition.
Right. There are certain needs that do need to be met. Otherwise, like, without being met long enough. I mean, it's even back to babies. If children aren't held enough, if as a child, like as a newborn, if you aren't picked up often enough and, like, held, you stop growing. Like, you literally, like, the baby will just die. Because it's not being cared for enough. So it's not even like it just needs a little every once in a while. Like, babies actually require a set amount of time a day that they have to be held in order for them to continue to grow. Otherwise, the body knows that they're being neglected, and then they just start shutting
down. That's crazy to me.
So you're absolutely right about that. There's the real needs there, man, and don't. I'm glad that you're talking about it. So you're making this easier for me than you could be. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do what I can.
Yeah.
Going back to, like, the music and everything, though, if you get good at anything and then you want it to be like, you want to show it to other people, you could send me a clip of it and I could post it on my YouTube.
Oh, right. Yeah. Or put it in, like, as background music or something, or put it at the beginning or end.
Yeah, just anything. Like, I could just, like, help promote you essentially, and then you could even post it on your own too, if you just want the recognition for it. Like,
yeah, put his link in his channel in your description or whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like that might help you be motivated a little bit too. Like, especially when people start watching, because people would love shit like that kind of creativity. That's like what humans kind of want. I feel like for themselves and to see from other people.
Yeah, shout them out in your video and say, hey, like, the music that you hear in the background or the beginning or end of the video or whatever is by Fatal, and check out his channel or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, and then you can all, like, post it on your channel as well, man. Like,
the full thing or whatever.
Yeah, like plaster that shit on the web, you know? Like, I feel like that's a good thing about the web. Like, you could, like, just plaster that shit all over anywhere that you can get it on there.
Oh yeah, there's of locations to kind of advertise yourself on if you're the artist of a certain persuasion. But yeah, you know, tell you the truth, guys, the crazy thing is that I have all sorts of very intricate musical concepts that are already mapped in my head. But the crazy thing is I haven't had the wherewithal to put it into practice up until now. So it's, I mean, if you could imagine like really like good, subjective content that's always floating around, but you've never had the means of expressing it.
Yeah.
It drives you crazy because it's always there and it never goes away. It just keeps reminding you, hey,
it's maddening.
I'm a thing that could exist. You just got to do it. You know.
Right. You got to gain the skill or like get in the right environment to make it actually happen. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. Whatever. It sounds like we're coming up with some like good concrete ways of helping to keep you accountable. I want to mention two other things. So first of all, be careful with giving away your DNA. It can be used, especially if certain organizations get their hands on it. It can be used to, trace you and determine things about you that you may not want certain organizations to know. So just be aware that it's not it's not just like a free thing or like a risk-free thing giving away your DNA. And then the second thing is, and we can expand upon that if you want to. We can go into a little more depth there. The second thing I wanted to say was, as far as like I mentioned before, what drives you to it? Like, what are your triggers? Right? Is it just when you're bored? Like, the smallest things that I can think of to help you is to the best thing to do is not even get into the mindset, right? Like just ignore it. Really, it's not helping you, it's not doing you any good and you want to stop. So the best way to stop is to not let your brain even pick up that thought or that thread, right? And that's going to be a fight because your brain is like wired to do one thing and you want to do another thing, right? So like your brain is at odds with itself at this point. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, Tom and Jerry, that kind of stuff.
A little something like that, sure. I you could conceptualize it that way. So the key here, the trick here is, and I mean, mistakes are going to happen, or like maybe you're going to have a bad day. Like don't let yourself be so constricted or bound by the idea that uh, you don't find that release when it's actually necessary, right? Like part of this process, part of it along the way, is going to be like, why am I doing this, right? Like you're going to be in the middle of it and be like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. It's not fun for me. Like it's like not doing me any good. I don't enjoy it anymore, right? Like those are the kinds of things that will help you not just avoid something, but actually heal from whatever it was that was causing you to start in the first place. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the kinds of things that I'm trying to offer to you in some sense, and I'm not sure exactly how to go about it because there's a large number of components that can tie into this one idea, but the idea would be like healing or growth or self-improvement, and you're presenting this problem as I want to quit doing this thing, and And the best, the best response that I know how to give you is to, it's not even to like ignore it or to just tell yourself not to do it. It's to actually like dive into what is happening and why, right? And as I said, the biological and the, emotional imperatives that you're experiencing to some extent. So, if you wanted to dive into that subject at any time, let me know.
Oh, absolutely. And it can even surmise to the point where that sort of mechanism acts up, and I can either choose to walk away from it and
identify it at least, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that ugliness that you said that needs to be brought up every now and then when it comes to certain things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So there's a number of conversations that we could be having right at this moment. I have been taking up a ton of your guys' airtime, so I'm gonna kind of shut up for a little while now and let you guys decide if you want to continue talking at all. Right now, it's been about 2.5 hours or so at this point.
Golly gosh.
Yeah, and I know it's a work day tomorrow, right? So we got real world needs that we gotta take care of here. So, yeah, man, I want to encourage you to do good things. Do what you think is right for you, and you're gonna have to try and fail at certain things, unfortunately. But if I can help you avoid some of the pitfalls that I went through, absolutely will help you there. Like I said, the best advice I know how to give you is to try to like really get to the root of things. That's not necessarily the easiest or most expedient path, but in terms of building up and like helping develop character and like motivation and like positive outcomes or positive outlooks, at least, the best I know how to tell you is to like go back to the source and really understand who you are and why you are so motivated to take certain actions, and what is it about you on a personal physical level that is it just a stress relief, or is there an emotional need? Is there an addictive portion to this, or is it just a habit and it's comfortable because that's like that you're going to feel good for just a second at least at the end of that. And even if it's just for a second, even if you regret it immediately afterwards or almost immediately afterwards, there's at least a brief moment in there where like you didn't have to feel like such shit for for that period of time, right? So there's a lot of like components to kind of break down here, and I just wanted you to. I'm trying to convey to you that perhaps it would help you to recognize that it's just a first step, right? Like you're saying that you want to improve your life, and one of the ways is starting with like not looking at pornography anymore. And I'm trying to tell you, if you want to skip a few steps ahead, going to like the source and understanding yourself kind of is like the cheat codes, right? Like that's the kind of 1 or 2 steps ahead for how do you turn what was previously a negative in your life into a positive. Because once you understand how to harness that energy, what's going to stop you, man?
Well, of course, and to kind of expand on that on a more subjective kind of circumstance. I mean, in terms of what I have, where I come from, like I'm half Cuban, half Dominican. That part of the world, that Caribbean aspect of me, I've recognized that
high emotion,
high passion, definitely high sex drive from what I can surmise based
Certainly.
on based on my runnings with them. I mean, it's just
Oh yeah, all the statistics bear that.
I can see where that comes from. So it's just like how it comes down to allocating that passionate drive in a positive
Exactly.
manner. Yeah.
Exactly. And the fun part is once you learn to control it, then you can choose where and when to use it, right? And sometimes that'll be for like fun things. And like you'll get to focus intently on like fun things that it's like it's like the difference in qualities of water, right? Like if you tasted bad water and you tasted like good clean like, good mineral water or whatever, very refreshing. There's quite a difference between the two, but technically they're both water, right? So, so it's like that's the kind of qualitative difference that you can have in your experiences in life. Now, I've not directly experienced this to any great degree, which is why I'm struggling on my end a little bit with that. But that is my understanding of the direction that I'm going in. So that's what I'm trying to portray to you. So it's not, well, recently I've come to the realization that the amount of suffering that I endure is in my head, right? What I call suffering doesn't actually have to be suffering. What I call a problem doesn't actually have to be a problem, or maybe isn't actually a problem. And that only existed ever in my head. So with that realization, I'm starting to understand how to view like work differently, how to view exercise differently, how to view relationships that are sometimes challenging, especially when it comes to like family and friends. When you can't just like walk away or say whatever first comes to your mind, right? When you can't just fly off the handle in a rage, it's in those moments that I've been reflecting the most lately, and trying to understand where the flare-ups come from, where the passion comes from. So, if with my mild-mannered, upbringing and background, I can only imagine how difficult it is for you to sometimes control your emotions. But I can only tell you from experience that as I've learned to control my emotions, I've also learned better who I am, and that's really helped me kind of gain focus in my life and helped me start down a path that I can actually be a little bit proud of, right? Having never really been proud of anything I've accomplished before in life. So this is a relatively new experience for me as well.
Yeah. Solid insights. I would rate that. It's a very good solid insight.
Sure.
Rami, anything you want to expand on based on what we've mentioned so far? Or do you want to carry this to a different direction?
Yeah, I'm pretty much I'm chilling, man. Like just listening to you guys talk. I kind of like the direction that we're going in, just in general, in terms of like, I think we should continue like doing these podcasts, and like I'll try to post them. Like if we do them once a week, I think things will come out of it, and also it seems like it's gaining some traction in terms of like people like to watch stuff like this, and then on top of that, like if like our mic, like so our volume, except my mic for some reason is not up to snuff, but if we can like get the audio good on these podcasts, I think people will like begin watching more of that stuff. And then if I post every day, like it'll bring attention like to the causes we're trying to hash out. And then hopefully like this kind of stuff can gain traction, and then like we can be helped along our way of like trying to hash out this kind of stuff by people who are attracted to the content. That's what I'm hoping. But like that obviously is a lot of different like things that have to come together for that to happen. But that's like kind of my hope for it.
Yeah, I think generally businesses are just people who are continually trying to improve and work together to create something together, right? So loosely or more structured the organization may be, will determine whether or not what we accomplish. But I like the direction that we're going in, and as we've alluded to many times before, we don't know how positive we can make things, and so we're starting off from a pretty interesting spot in our life, right? If we made it this far into our realities, and we've met each other through the avenues that we have, vis-a-vis YouTube, right? It seems to me that we're starting in a pretty bleak place, but I'm hopeful because, well, we're here, right?
Yeah, we're in a situation in which we weren't before, so it's going to some direction.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have some tangible benefits here, probably in the near future, right? Rami knows that. Well, maybe he doesn't know, but I don't mess around. Two things I don't mess around with: money and people. I don't know. I just don't like messing around with people. I normally prefer to be like upfront and straight with them and let them deal with it, right? Whatever that may be.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a more masculine frame to take, right? And I think some people don't even take that frame. So even that I don't take for granted, because I don't always think that I didn't always have that mental framework. So just pointing that out, we should be careful about what we take for granted as far as knowledge goes. And some of the people who find their way to your channel, Ronnie, they may not know all the terms and stuff that we do. So we'll have to keep that into account as we proceed forward.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so Rami, you're just chilling. You like the direction that we're going in. You seem like you're doing well with. You're okay with chiming in whenever you want to add in your thoughts. I think we're all being pretty respectful about letting each other talk and get out ideas and whatnot. Is that true so far?
Yeah, it's true. That's what it seems like to me. It seems like we're pretty chilling on that.
Okay, good. All right. Well, like I said, we can always come back to topics, right? Like we can put a pin in things at any time. Basically, we can write it down in the channel. We can do whatever. We can do spin-offs. There's all sorts of possibilities. So,
Also,
while I think organization is important and focus is important, if you have a good idea, chime in, right? Or if you have something important to say or useful to say, chime in.
Yeah, and I think current events too. Like whenever we should try to discuss like some current events, like in like future podcasts and things like that. Like now that if we're gonna be meeting every week, at least once a week, like let's try to get some current events in there, because I think that'll kind of draw the algorithm toward toward us basically, and then we can like around like the current events we discussed, we can also talk about our greater goals for what we're trying to do, like just in general, like in terms of like our working together.
We should probably start listing out, something, right? maybe creating some sort of documentation. I think if we can formalize ourselves a little bit better, I think that'll help onboard anybody else who may come along and be interested in working with us, right? If you want to really game the algorithms and stuff like that, right? Putting certain words and topics into the title. Have you already been demonetized, or were you ever monetized? I don't even know.
No, I'm not, because I'm not even monetized. You have
Do
to.
we need to beep out some of my cussing earlier? I may have to.
No, I don't think that affects it. Like, in order to be monetized, I have to get to 1K subscribers and like 4,000 hours of watch time. That's why I always kept saying like, I want to get to 1K.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's just brainstorming. The Tribe Report. Have you heard of them?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, perhaps I should shout out to them. I think they're doing good work. Don't always agree with everything that they say, but I think they have good heads on their shoulders, and I think they're trying to do the right thing and lead men in the direction that will ultimately get them where they want to be, whether or not they realize that. So they have recently been exploding with content and just really cranking it out. And basically, they've been doing reactions. They're a man and a woman. I don't know exactly their relationship, but they announce themselves as co-hosts. So they do reactions to TikTok content, things that people bring to them that basically all content creators in the like red pill space these days are guys who take TikToks that men in their community have found and like post or like give to these content creators to react to, basically. And I see it over and over again because the content gets recycled, right? Like everybody is reacting to the same content more or less.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing that because that works, right? The algorithm knows what people like, and if people watch, similar, content in one, they might be interested in a different opinion or a slightly altered opinion on the same content. That may be true. However, I think a lot of people are seeing, a lot of the same content, and there's not not a next step sort of thing, right? Like after Red Pill, what do, right? And a lot of the guys talk about self-actualization and all that, but the reality is most of these guys are way too broken to ever even hope of getting to where they want to go. Now, I'm not saying that to disparage anybody. The struggle is real, but it has to be, right. That's what defines us as humans. We have to struggle against our reality, and that's what it means to be a man, right? To change the very nature of reality with our own hands into something more tenable for us, right? That's inborn in every man.
Let me jump in here, dude. We should do this. We should do some like reaction type shit, like to Jordan Peterson's and Kevin Samuels and shit like that.
Certainly. Well, that was one thought. What I was thinking more is interaction, though. So I think what guys are really interested in, and a lot of people are becoming more interested in, is like the direct one-on-one talks and interactions, right? Like the Kevin Samuels, when he gets those women or men on his show, he doesn't hold any punches, right? He equal rights, equal left, right? But he gets people like live on his show, and that's what drives his original content, let's say. Whereas a lot of people are just getting it from like TikTok, right? So I think if we want to really build and help men at the same time, I think that those two things being intertwined will skyrocket your channel, right? So some sort of interaction, some sort of like, come to our channel, come to our conversations, you'll be on YouTube and people will hear, your thoughts too, right? And maybe we give you a little coaching advice, maybe maybe we whatever the current problem is, maybe we can give them some practical advice, right? And if we do this with enough guys, or we get repeat guys who come back and they're saying, okay, I got that one nailed down, I'm struggling on this part, how can I get to the gym more, right? Or whatever, right? Or how do I approach better, or how do I get my finances in order, whatever. These are the real day-to-day like life coach things that most guys haven't gotten because they don't have their fathers around, or their fathers didn't even know, right? Like, or not everybody is the ideal man, and some guys are so far removed from that they have no earthly concept of how to get from where they are to where they want to be. And I think that's the important part, right? Like, once you get to black pill, it's because like you have no earthly idea how to fix your life, right? Like, there's nothing good in your life anymore. Basically, it's just all facts and like harsh reality and like logic, and we're creatures with emotion, so we can't just live in logic. And I think that's the hard part for a lot of guys that get to this black pill, is that they see that pattern and they see the logic, and there's not enough of the emotional side, which would normally come from a partnership or pairing or like some sort of place in society. They don't have any of that, so they have nothing to cling to when the logic is, life sucks and it's suffering. So, golly, I hate pontificating so much. But are you guys clear so far? At least I don't want to keep on rambling on. Am I making sense so far?
Yes, it's more along the lines of like what sort of aspect of the public discourse do we
want to
attach ourselves to?
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and I think that's ultimately what will get you the most quality and quantity of people, if that makes sense, right? If we show that we're helping real people and they come back on the show every once in a while, say like, yeah, that actually worked, thanks for helping keeping me accountable. You guys have been doing what you said you would do. We're working on getting my business spun up or whatever. If we're being real, and like, as much as I suck as a human being, right? Like, I don't have all the skills that I really need to be doing most of what I'm talking about at this point, but opportunities present themselves, so I'm trying to go with it, right? And I'll develop the skills as I go, right? School of hard knocks, so to speak. Unfortunately, I'm not well equipped for that, but life is life. So I'm just looking around, at all the different content creators, and it seems like the ones that are doing the best are the ones that like the Tribe Report, suddenly coming out of nowhere and like doing very well, very rapidly, and they're just a man, like a young man and young woman. I mean, don't know exactly how young they are. I would say like mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s at the oldest, I guess. But they're giving their opinions, and they're copying off the content that I see from like Taylor the Fiend and like some of Better Bachelor. I see that like all entrepreneur in cars, right? Like all these content creators kind of get the same TikToks from the same people because they all go to the same content creators, right? I'm just kind of following the trail, it seems, as far as YouTube is concerned. And the algorithm is just giving me the, whatever it thinks I want. Kind of following that trail, it seems like you'll get a lot of viewership that way, but it's not the most quality people. The Tribe Report is doing very well so far, which is why I keep on bringing them up and why I want to sort of model some of their content. Doing a reaction, I think, is a good idea, but I also want to bring in more than that, which is like the actual hands-on, like how do we work with people, right? And how do we help people? That will give us some definition and meaning to our lives. I think that'll give me, personally, and I don't know about you guys, but it'll give me some more motivation to improve myself and work on my business and do things that I think I have to create the meaning for, right, in my life. So the more interaction that I have with people that is positive, the more likely my brain is to associate, helping people as a positive thing. So I'm trying to, endeavor towards that end. And
Yeah, and I think
showing content like that may help, I think.
Yeah, I think this will just give us some shit to do as well. Like some shit to do and talk about. So like if we want to interact with each other more frequently. Just by
I think that would be better.
Mhm. Yeah, just by like reviewing some of this shit, then we could even, go to current events too as well. Like
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Like shit on the Jerome Powell when he did his little statement there. We just shit on him a little bit.
Yeah, or just try to make sense of it. Yeah, just exactly. Like we can do
we should tie these things in.
important shit.
Like we should. Rami, you were making that point of like inflation and our, disincentivized, motives or whatever, and monetary policy being a factor in that. You're absolutely right, and we should start like explaining that to people. I think guys need to understand how their government works, how their how money works, how the world works, right? How geopolitics works. We need to, in our endeavor to become men, I guess, in some sense. Maybe that's just me, but in that endeavor, the men that I respect most are the well-rounded ones, the ones that admit when they're wrong and try to correct it as quickly as possible, and they tend to know a lot of things, right? They tend to understand how to apply those things to the real world too. It's not just about knowledge; it's about wisdom to some extent, right?
Yeah.
So, in our endeavor to, kind of gain those attributes, I think helping other guys along the way can only positively reinforce us, right? Like when these guys make it big, maybe they'll remember us, right? Like, hey, those guys really helped me out of a dark spot, and like I started my company, or I got to work, and now I'm just crushing it, right? Like, and I finally got to the gym. Like they encouraged me through that. Like I finally got my diet right. They encouraged me through that. Like they helped me work through the shit through my childhood. Not having a dad helped me explain how to do taxes and crap like that. Like helped me get my life organized. Helped me get me on schedule. When you start putting all those things together, and a guy gets to a high up spot in his life, he tends to, well, the ideal would be that he tends to remember the people that helped him get there, right? That's not always the case, but I would like to foster the kind of relationship where that would be the case, let's say.
Yeah.
And I don't think that'll cost us too much, and in the process, that'll help us sort out our thoughts and our ideas, right? Like as we talk to each other and talk to other people about their problems, we can be working on our own, and kind of that upward spiral thing, right? If I could harness my energy better, I could probably make millions within the next 2 months, right? And that's I don't say that jokingly, right? Like I actually have this opportunity, and when I'm faced with that, and I still don't work feverishly to make that happen, it makes me understand that my motivations are something other than just money in life, right? So I'm exploring
that makes sense.
I'm exploring that too, right? Like I'm trying to make meaningful relationships with people because as far as I can tell, that's the only way to survive in an otherwise harsh and uncaring world, right? Like if we choose to care about each other, that's how we, get ourselves out of this mess. Because individually, I think we drown, right? Like the world's too
What
big. There's too many
about
other
this?
people. Too many of them. Not enough of you, right?
What about this? Not millions in the next 2 months, but what about like what if we tried to make $1 million in the next like 2 years?
No. I seriously mean over. I seriously mean approximately 2 million, maybe 2.5 million. If I worked my ass off right now, we could make that money in the next 2 months.
Well, I mean that okay, like I can see that. Maybe you can see that. I can see that at all, but
No.
not for
Yeah,
me.
there's been new developments and opportunities that you are not aware of.
Okay, like but for what we do like in this like with what we're doing here, because I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on with like you and
Justin.
Justin and all that shit. But like just for here, like what we're doing here, like with this group,
Mhm.
like if we could do like $1 million in the next 2 years, like for me, that would be that would be amazing.
That'd be incredible for anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
And take into
that'd be
account all the training that's still be quite a sufficient amount there. That would be 2 years. Yeah. Income from stuff like that. Right. Well,
yeah, that's something I
once
can
again,
comprehend. That would be like good. You know what I mean? Like that'd be like a goal for me.
right. And you have to think of in assets too, right? It doesn't just have to be cash or money, right? If it's millions, but you have like things paid off, uh, it doesn't have to be all in cash. So um, inflation doesn't have to necessarily be the end all be all, right? Like you want a working car and you want a home to live in. So those are things that are hard assets that sometimes appreciate, sometimes depreciate, but you always need someplace to live, right? And transportation of some sort, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So anyway, all right. If you're willing to expand your idea about what 1 million means, then I think that's achievable in the next 2 years or so.
Yeah, that'd be solid.
Cool.
Like
Okay. Well, there's all sorts of things happening in the world, guys. Current events is the real deal. People who make the right calls. I mean, it's kind of worldwide betting right now. Betting on a global scale. That's scary to me because kind of like we're messing with the future here, right? To some extent. But there is a lot of money to be made, and if we wanna make real changes, then realistically we have to make a lot of money, right? Like if we want to have influence and if we want to have the things that we want to set up for a parallel society, so to speak, right? We're going to need, massive amounts of capital. Uh, and so I'm all I can think about these days are ways to do that, and I'm trying to well, on a personal note, I'm trying to find the reason to do that. I've been struggling recently, even so much as last night. I was up basically till 3 a.m. trying to like understand why I was alive and why I should continue to do so.
Yeah, what I think what would help that is like getting getting continuous input and being able to tap into continuous input from other people.
Sure.
Like
Well,
which
we're
is
all like, I'm a relatively independent person, as I've mentioned before. I'm also introverted, so I'm sure that both of those things don't help. So,
or at
I mean,
least have someone that you can go to that has that constant input from other people.
well, right. I mean, the ideal would be that I no longer need that input at some point, but I think in the meantime, like Fatal is alluding to or mentioned, having some help, right? Having an accountability buddy. I don't know how that hurts us, right? Like, it's going to suck sometimes because like we're going to fail each other, right? Like sometimes I'm not going to say the right thing or do the right thing, and or I'm going to make a bad decision, or something's going to happen that one of you guys won't like, right? It's bound to happen, as Romney knows.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we always keep the lines of communication open and come at things with the idea that we're all trying to actually help each other, right? And as we build these like little moments, right? We've now been talking nearly 3 hours, or maybe
Yeah,
more
this
at
would
this
be a
point.
good podcast.
So we're making an investment of time and energy into each other's lives, and we're doing it in a positive way, right? And like, we're here to encourage each other. We're here to talk about business and future and like money and like whatever, anything else that we need to talk about to help each other get where we want to go, right? And I think that's the sort of community that men need these days, because nobody else is going to give that to them. Everybody else wants them to be like a slave or a peon. Like, it's going to be hard work, but at least we're going to, be working for each other, right? It would be ideally a team-based system, and you guys are okay with letting people go, so I'm willing to be more lax with letting people on if we're willing to let people go, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, sort of on my part. It's like letting people on, I understand, but do you mean like letting people go in like a personal, like, hey, this person is kind of being a drag on my mojo kind of sense, or
Vibe check.
a little bit? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I talked to Rami about business things and endeavors. Some of that has been successful, some of it has not, right? But we're still here, still talking with him, still trying to help him and encourage him improve his life, and help give him content and ideas of ways to improve the areas that he wants to improve in. So there's always all sorts of opportunities. I think our interactions mostly should be positive, and I think as we bring other people in, we're going to have to be careful about what they have to say, right? Like, we're going to have to be discerning about what ideas we let in and don't let in, right? If somebody's being negative, I'm willing to, and they're just absolutely unwilling to change their behavior, and it's really bringing other people down, or it's causing problems or whatever, I'm willing to let people go from the group setting and only work with them one-on-one if that's necessary. But I don't want the idea would be for no one person to be the bottleneck, right? In practice, that's kind of difficult because people are lazy and we all suck, and yada yada yada. But we're trying, right? So got to give ourselves some credit.
Yeah, I understand.
Being decentralized I think will be important. Like I wouldn't consider myself de facto. I would say that I'm CEO of like the business that I'm trying to start up, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I was made for that role or that I'm particularly good at it, as from you may know. But I am trying, and I am working on learning those skills, and I'm trying to become like a people manager. I'm trying to become less introverted, trying to learn how to speak properly. Um, I've adapted a large number of things, like, my dietary habits. I'm trying to exercise more. I'm trying to do all the things that people, recommended that I do. Unfortunately, that's still not enough to motivate me, which really sucks because apparently I'm some special snowflake that needs extra special motivation to get out of bed every day and do something. But that's just me, right? And I'm working on it, and I'm getting better at it every day. So it's just where I am now, and I recognize how hard it is for how hard it can be for people to even get started on self-improvement or get going in the right direction. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you two being here. At 3 hours in, I appreciate you guys being here, right, talking with me about each other's problems, and seeing how we might be able to help each other stay accountable and fix them.
Yeah, I mean, it's no sweat. I mean, in a paradigm of boundless opportunities and possibilities such as this, it was only a matter of time before, a cohort of individuals such as ourselves got together and talked about the things we were talking about. So what we're doing right now is just taking a role.
Yeah,
we're assuming responsibility.
Exactly, and okay. I'm glad that you brought that up. First of all, the mantle of responsibility. You guys know Halo?
Yeah,
I am
played
woefully
Halo. I played Halo 3.
unfamiliar with the Halo franchise.
That's fair. Well, there's something called the mantle of responsibility. I think that concept needs to be applied to humanity, and I think we need to take that a little bit more seriously. But no, I hear what you're saying. Were you gonna say something, Romy?
No. Like, I was just saying, like, I played Halo 3. That's the only Halo I've, that's, like, in a little bit of Halo 2.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I've just read a little bit of the Halo lore because I'm a freaking nerd. I don't know. And I was bored. So, you mentioned responsibility, and we are taking on responsibility. And as Jordan Peterson likes to say, nope. I'm going to terribly misquote him. So he doesn't say it this way, but I'm going to attribute this idea to Jordan Peterson. With responsibility, you gain like purpose, right? You gain meaning and power and influence in your life, your sphere of tangibles. Let's say that's the. Lost my train of thought for a second there.
It's a responsibility.
Yeah. He was saying, like Jordan Peterson giving like meaning and purpose to life through responsibility. Basically, like you're gonna suffer anyway, but by adopting some responsibility, that gives you like the why. That gives you something that you value, and it has no value to anybody but yourself. So that you have to be realistic about that, right? But it's something that you value because you want to, right? It's a responsibility that you want to take on, and you have to take it on like soberly and clear-headedly to really be, effective in defining your own purpose, like your own meaning in life, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know about the life is suffering thing,
So I think
but like, other than that, like, I agree.
Say again.
But I don't like subscribe to the whole like the life is suffering thing. Like, other than that, then like like what you say makes sense. Or even like Jordan Peterson too. Like I think he
Yeah.
just goes too much into like the life is suffering. Like I think part of it's suffering, but like not all of it.
Okay. It's fair. I mean, it's not always suffering, I suppose. If the default mode of life would be like the equivalent of suffering, but it's not always suffering. So that's a good distinction to make.
Another way to say is that the undertaking of responsibility wouldn't necessarily be interpreted as suffering.
It doesn't have to be.
If you're attributing, if you're attributing the positive weight to it.
Well, what do most kids learn about responsibility in their early years? That it sucks, right? Like if you do something wrong because you were responsible for it, then like you get in trouble, right?
But as you get older, you don't put as much of that weight on it. It's just something that you kind of eat.
Well, that's the point that I'm trying to make is not everybody wants to eat that shit sandwich, right? And that's those are the kind of guys that I'm trying to reach out to. I think you guys are the kind of guys that don't like to eat those kinds of sandwiches. Let's say every day, right? You're at least interested in not continuing that at some point in the future. You're not clear maybe exactly on how to stop that just yet, but you at least want to get to that point in your life. And I mean, the reality is some guys don't even know that they're eating that kind of sandwich. Then they think they're eating steak or whatever, right? So it takes all kinds. But I forgot where I was going with that. Man, I'm really bad with my memory. It's getting late for me.
No sweat. I mean, I surmise that we're at the point of just kind of winding things down. I think it's like a good place to kind of just summarize
right
our contact areas of what we're aspiring to persist on at this point.
Right.
In terms of what we've already spoken about with goals we're trying to maintain and cultivate.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I remember now that we were talking about like Rami doesn't like the idea that life is suffering. So once again, I agree with you there. But adopting responsibility is something like learning how to like grow muscle off of eating that crap, right? You know what I mean? Responsibility is like, all right, it's crap, but whatever little like nuggets or nutrition or like whatever little value that there is in it, I'm gonna use it for something that will like build me up, right? Or build up my community or whatever, my team. Ultimately myself in the end, right? People are greedy and that's just the human condition, right? We gotta be cognizant of the human condition throughout all of this in ourselves and in the people that we interact with, right? That's what being a man is, being so emotionally aware of yourself that you understand other people and their situations too, right?
Yeah, like humans aren't. I wouldn't say humans are like default greedy either, though. Or like humans are like they're just greedy. They can be greedy. Like they can be altruistic. It's just I don't like it's the same as that suffering thing. I just don't. It's just not like that all the time. But it's true, but it doesn't mean it's not like that all the time. Like it's also true that humans can be like even what's the word? Like they could even like injure themselves for other people. Like
Self-effacing,
yeah. Yeah, like they could be self-effacing exactly. It just depends.
Well, no, you're right. Perhaps I'm being a little unfair in my word choice, my verbiage, and maybe even my thoughts.
Yeah, as a Christian, Rami, you're attributing the work that you decide that you choose to undertake for yourself as a means of getting closer to that sort of godly right that you have as a creation, as sort of like a manifestation of
A birthright?
yes, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should rephrase that to like an existence right.
Yeah, I'd find that statement to be valid.
Because a birthright I would attribute with something to do with like the human condition, right? But you're talking about like a god level, like the fact that you exist. You're saying you have some right or claim to divinity or something.
As an aspect of a faculty of being human, attributing yourself in the relationship that you have with the greater part of reality.
Your relation is the important part, not you in particular, but your relation to that greater power is what you're saying is the important part.
Like, I would say that
Yes.
that like greater power makes the fact that like you're even a thing makes it like that makes it like a full like you're like a spectrum of like you're a full spectrum of whatever you can like conceive essentially is like what I kind of think like the fact that we can perceive that oh there is suffering at all means that there must be a spectrum, or the fact that we can perceive that like there is greed at all means that there must be a spectrum, or else we wouldn't be able to like perceive it. And I that the ability that we have to perceive it, yeah, I do attribute that to like a divine being, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like
Now, may I offer this perspective of, I think people consider, I think a lot of people in the world consider themselves everything and then resent the fact the world forces them to narrow down that everything into a more narrow focus, whatever the least narrow focus they can get away with. But often a very narrow focus indeed.
yeah, I mean if they accept it, yeah. But like I think humans can't be everything. Like we are human, but then within that, as we create society, we can't be everything in society either. But like I do think what we can
Individually,
be,
no.
yeah,
But
individually no.
as
I
a
think
group, yes, that's what society is, right?
yeah, as a group, yes. And like whatever place you take in that group, I think that you can choose that to a certain extent. I think
Sure.
people
Well,
don't realize how much that they can.
I think we take for granted that people can choose their occupation because, a couple hundred years ago, we were all farmers, right? Like, you didn't have a choice. If you had an animal, you were a blacksmith too, right? If you had a windmill, then you were an architect.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? Hi, 820 here.
Hey, what's good?
Welcome in. Suppose I'm checking in late.
Yeah,
That's
we
all
were
right.
we were like wrapping up actually. So yeah, but it's all good. It is what it is. Some of the
Yeah,
things
no,
that I
we can.
posted, like
Give
we
me the
might end
top
up
deck,
doing.
guys.
What's that?
Yeah, yeah. We'll give you the highlight reel, right? The highlight reel. Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, let's put a pin in our previous conversation. Do we need to wrap up anything else about like you guys were working on me a little bit. I appreciate that there. You were trying to help me approach a life a little bit differently there. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that we need to wrap up on that part of the conversation?
I mean, I'm chilling on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can pick up, I imagine there will be a lot of topics that we kind of have to come back to again and again as we, hash out ideas. We need to revisit some ideas and topics to make sure that things don't need to be edited or updated as we move along, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So let's pause there, and then we can catch A20 up. And then if people need to go, I totally understand. I can stay up for a little bit longer and give A20 the highlight reel. We can go from there, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
We can proceed at that.
Okay. So, well, this has been now a almost 3.5 hour conversation for Vito and I. We started off basically talking about how do we want to practically improve our lives on a day-to-day basis. We started talking about like business opportunities, some of our problems like that we're currently facing in our personal lives, things that we want to overcome that will help us better focus our energy on the things that we want to do in our lives.
They call it small victories, something like that.
Well, that's the general vein. Yes, we actually really dug down into some very practical applications. Basically, one of the outcomes of our conversation was that well, as South Park likes to put it, accountability buddies. We would like to help each other be accountable in maintaining our personal goals. And one way that we decided on doing that was by having more frequent conversations or more impromptu conversations. One of the ideas being that we could potentially learn how to talk and work at the same time, so that we can all be maximizing our potential.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the nature of reality, how in tune we are with like higher powers. Talked about kind of our vision for the future for how we want the channel to evolve. We talked with Rami about this is content creation right now. We're also talking about future content creation, other channels that we like the Tribe Report that I've been watching, and I've been trying to learn from a lot of other content creators, like what is successful and what is not in terms of putting things out into the YouTube universe, right, and getting the algorithm to direct people in the right direction and getting viewership and people to subscribe and actually like videos. Those are the kind of things that we talked about with Rami. We're trying to get people potentially such as yourself, if you're interested in this concept. We're considering doing some sort of I don't know if it's really coaching, mentorship, maybe partnership, like just accountability buddies. I'm not exactly sure how this sort of works. We did mention the idea of family or camaraderie, like teams. Those have been ideas that we've been throwing around because we're looking at trying to build a little bit of a community here, and we all agree that building up people and helping each other and encouraging each other to meet our goals and continue forward on a path of self-improvement, spiraling upwards instead of downwards, basically.
In the most pragmatic sense, basically
Exactly.
utilizing the small circle that we've developed now as a means to develop a program, if you would, to
rapidly
establish that mentorship.
bare minimum, what state has the best gun laws, and what's the cheapest property, 2 to 4 acres with water on it, or like well water with quality well water.
Actually, I did mention that too.
That's like bare minimum.
Yeah, well, I did actually mention that to these other two gentlemen that I was considering buying land, right, and building some sort of housing and allowing people to actually work on a farm to see if they can do it, right? Like if guys want to go
forever based on your own operating system, your mind.
But,
of course, however, if you are a believer in, say, Christianity or certain Abrahamic religions, you might believe that you could talk to God, or you could maybe connect with a dead loved one or something like that. But again, if you were atheist or you were just a non-believer, you wouldn't have that route to turn to. So I think,
sure,
I think like the motivation to act or not act is rather simple. But for those that are spiritual, there are more factors. So again, then you would have to ask yourself, are you spiritual or not?
Right.
So that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the part of what fascinates me about all this is that we can even ask these questions, right? Like, why do we even have these concepts?
Are you spiritual or more like non-believer?
At this point, I would say that I don't understand enough. I was raised in the Judeo-Christian faith. I think that as far as like value system goes, I agree with the way that they say people should live for the most part, because I think that is what works with our hardware, like the way our brains actually works, right? And it creates a system that allows us to, live in relative peace and comfort, which is I think a worthy goal for many people. So I wouldn't say that I'm super spiritual, but I think that I'm trying to understand it better, and I think there are things that I don't understand. I would like to think that I'm connected with some sort of higher consciousness in some sort of capacity. But as far as my understanding goes of that, I can't say much more than I'd like to think that there is some sort of connection there.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. That's interesting. And I also had a Christian background family. I'd gone to churches occasionally, but it wasn't a regular thing. It was kind of more like whenever thing.
Right.
Let's see. When it comes to connecting to, if you think you're part of a, how should I put it? Something larger or whatnot, I think that you could try looking into different branches of meditation. And
yeah, I have that.
Parts of your mind that normally you would close off. And then again, there's, while not legal, there's psychedelics through a guided teacher that is responsible and has good reputation. Setting's important. There's people that have I known that used to work in the U.S. Navy. They'd gone through seeing death, and they were able to get through PTSD through the use of psilocybin, amongst other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Treat it like a serious medicine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's hypnotism. If there's something like important memories that you might have forgotten, like your $1 million crypto wallet, which many people Yeah, let me tell you, there's some funny stories out there of people that have paid hypnotists absurd money to try remembering their crypto wallet code and stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, it would be worth it for everybody involved, but unfortunately, that field actually doesn't work all that well, right?
I think it's mostly like limited.
Yeah, the scope is very limited, and really, like, the person and the circumstances matter quite a lot, right? Like the form. It's not just about the hypnotism. It's about like all the surrounding structure that goes with it.
Oh yeah. But there's definitely routes you can pursue. I would say look into meditation. I can't even think right now. Meditation.
Yeah, meditation. Right. Yeah, meditation on the metaphysical, I think, is important for any person to like wrestle with what it means to be human, right?
Well, the majority of humanity actually, I think, would disagree with you. I'm not, because the majority of humanity just decides to become apathetic in respect to existential matters or even questions. And in fact, you can't so much as ask them two existential questions in a row without them saying, "Are you crazy?" Or "Hey, that's you think too much," or "Why worry about that? What's that have to do with the bills? Why isn't that about a girl? Oh, this man won't marry me. He makes 10 trillion billion dillion dollars a year, and I work at Starbucks, but I'm cute. Why won't he marry me?"
Right. That's true. It's interesting that you put it into perspective that way. I appreciate that. That's sort of a slap in the face to me, but you're absolutely right. I needed that. Maybe it's more like cold water to the face.
I got friends that rag on me. I still, I've had I've actually changed the most. 3 people that have been harsh on me. So.
There's something to that, man. Out of all the friend groups, guys, I imagine that you guys don't have very many close friends because, to be quite honest,
people that really care about you, friends or family, they'll tell you the bad news too.
Sure.
Like if you were like a psychopath or sociopath, then you would tell people mostly what they wanted to hear or what would give them positive feelings, and then basically just extract as needed. Because when you give people negative feelings, you really don't foster maximum utility out of them as an employee or as like friend or family. So, there are, if you look into the psychology of that, then, there's that side of things too.
Sure. Well, Jordan Peterson says something along the lines of like the zone of proximal learning. So
Jordan Peterson's a show.
Yeah.
No, I like a lot of his shit. I like a lot of his shit, but
he says some good things.
I gotta be the one.
Good things.
I gotta be the one to shit on Jordan Peterson. But
yeah. Well,
the thing is, I don't know if he was good at one point and then got compromised, or if he was always a shill. But either way, he's cool. He does like a lot of cool shit. But I think it's just like, if you like him, then I say it's only intellectually responsible of you to like him as like a pro wrestler, like you like a pro wrestler, because ultimately he isn't risking his well-being in the game of life, because I feel he has so much protection from like special interest groups and the lawyers that defend him. There's no way he's not making certain deals. There's no way. So his risk, I can't believe he maybe in the beginning, yeah, but he just became too popular to where there's no way. So I mean, but aside from that, doesn't mean he can't give good content. I'm just, in all honesty, what I'm saying, it doesn't need to be said, but I'm just like, I was just doing it for the fun of it. But yeah, that guy is just, yeah.
Well, upholding a certain image entails upholding certain compromises.
Interesting.
Not sure that's a saying, but it'll make sense to me.
No, that does make sense. That's an interesting way to conceptualize it. It implies that the good and the bad come together, right? Like you can't help one with the other. And I think that I think that's a little bit of a callous way to view his behavior and his thoughts. And the reason why I say that is because I've listened to I've listened to a lot of his work, right, and I've read some of his work, and I think he really does have good intention. And the reason why it's you could call him a shill, and I would say that that's a fair thing to say from your perspective, but I think from his perspective, he really is just trying to help like the most amount of people, right? The most amount of guys, or whatever.
I could agree that being the case. I mean, at the end of the day, once anyone gets popular in America, you're going to start getting approached and have to make compromises on not saying certain things if you want book deals.
Sure.
Or you're going to have to sacrifice some of your freedom of speech basically to not talk about certain corporations like BlackRock or IRS or whatever. Like, you're not going to put a New York Times article out criticizing the IRS and foreign lobbyist groups from China. Like, you're just not going to have the article go through. You'll get fired.
Well, I'm about that I don't give a fuck life. So,
but what I'm saying is you can still put out good quality content and do good. But I'm just saying you have to sacrifice.
Sure.
If you're reaching a large public, that's the thing. I mean, any of these people that are large, you just realize, wow, they've made concessions, but it doesn't mean. I look at it like the MTV thing in the 90s, like where everyone hated sellouts. But right. There were bands that sold out and still made good stuff, like Red Hot Chili Peppers and shit. But then there's some other bands, they say the same, you could argue that it didn't even really change their quality of their music. Even if it was shitty, it still remained or mediocre, it still remained the level of mediocre. But, there's other bands that when they went corporate, they just went shit, right? Like, it's like this idea of selling out. But there's YouTubers and politicians that do this as well. But you could, realistically, you could be doing the best you can, just like Jordan Peterson could be doing the best he can.
Sure.
So I'm giving him like the benefit of the best possible situation.
Yeah. No, that's admirable of you, because I think most people should be taken in the best light. I don't think everybody is trying to do the worst possible thing that they could do in any given moment. Most people are just trying to do the best they can with whatever knowledge or tools that they have, in whatever given moment, right? And being realistic about that as far as fame and ego goes, yeah, sure, maybe it's getting to the guy a little bit, but who wouldn't it, right? He's only human, and he does try his best.
I'm not blaming him for selling rugs for $3,500 to starving $200,000 in debt college students.
Right. Yeah, well,
buy my book for $10. Oh, and then buy this $3,000 rug.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm not as familiar with the context of that story, because I've heard about the rugs, but I wasn't aware of him selling them to like starving college kids.
The people. Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm being extra. I'm being honest. I'm just being extra facetious about it, right? I mean,
okay.
I mean, like, it's on the free market. Like, I'm just saying, these kids are gullible. Who's buying the books?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
That's like all of his selling base is like college kids. It's like if you're selling makeup and like, let's say like the makeup is more damaging to boys' faces, I wouldn't. There's like boys buying the makeup because you have like this transgender shit. I wouldn't blame the company for that, because like the intended user is females, right? And men and women have different, skin, sort of, like on their face,
sure.
materials. So I wouldn't blame that. I would say it would be wrong for a politician to levy, anything on that, any penalties, because that's like that would just be ridiculous abuse of a normal corporation that's just functioning in a totally legal way, and you're just creating bullshit for them, which makes the employees have a worse day. But yeah, that's basically that. So
right. Well, okay, so part of what we're going to have to discuss at some point, and I wasn't expecting to go down this far into like economics and responsibilities, but we have to talk about the mantle of responsibility here. If you're familiar at all with the Halo franchise, you may be familiar with the term mantle of responsibility. And one of the things that sort of we have to talk about here is there are zero-sum games, there are not zero-sum games. One of the games that humanity is playing right now is how much can we get away with extracting like resources from our planet, right? And who gets to do that, and why, and how? You know, all of those things are questions that, with technology as developed as it is today, we now have to really start bearing down on, right? When everybody was eking a living out of, out of the dirt, and you were only making sustenance, like living, really, wasn't really a problem. But now we're able to strip mine mountains and whatnot, right? And we're able to extract things from deeper and deeper within the core of our planet. Who do these resources really belong to, right? Like, why is it that somebody gets to own land and, extract the resources from it? The notion of property and whatnot, I think, is going to have to be addressed in the near future as like the human species, where it's like the Great Reset, right? You'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right?
I do believe that's where we're headed.
That seems to be the notion, or that seems to be the push, and
things may go well. I do think things may go.
It may go okay. It may not be the worst thing ever. That's what I'll say about that. But I wanted to bring up that point because I was, as we were talking about Jordan Peterson and him being, potentially being.
I'll be honest. I was bringing up legit points, but I just like to shit on him, even if.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Even at the height of my very valuable time, which I'd never get back.
Oh, right. I mean, I think the guy has good. He has useful things to say for a large portion of the
I've listened to hours and hours of Jordan Peterson. Hours.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I have too. So, like I said, I don't agree with everything that he says. I'm not thrilled about the approach that he takes on everything, but he is consistent, and I think he actually intends to do the right thing, and he actually has been through quite a bit of.
I'm done shitting on him. I'm just.
No.